I understand very little for sure. I mean, there's plenty of people you can ask about that. I'm sure of that. How's it? Are you getting to sleep now these days here? What I saw. Are they guinea pigs too? Is that what's going on?
I don't know what they're doing.
All right.
We'll find out.
All right.
Okay. Hi everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order at 5:30. Hope you all are doing well. Okay, Carter, agenda review. What's up? Oh, just kidding. Hello, even to you.
So tonight we're starting with the community dialogue. At the last meeting, the suggestion was to put that before the work session, so that's the first item. Then we will do the work session. There's two policies to review: videotaping events and civil disturbances. Minutes, there's a survey that was conducted by the outreach committee with EPD employees, and you've got the results from that and can review those. I'll give you an update on the selection process for a new commissioner. As you know, Caitlin is leaving. We'll have a little break, talk about the homeless scoping project. The chief will provide his report and answer questions, and then we'll have a quick discussion about what you want to have as agenda topics. Your next meeting will be in September, and that is the joint meeting with the Civilian Review Board.
Thank you. Are we doing? Yeah, okay. Okay, awesome. So, community dialogue. Would anyone like to? Okay, Carol, I guess you're first up.
Oh, well, unless you'd like us all together, what's your preference?
Why don't you all come up to the table?
It's harder. Ready for the chair?
Long time no see.
Hi, George. Let's have coffee someday.
Okay, so once you get settled at the table, if you could take turns introducing yourselves to the group, that would be great.
I'm Carol Berg Caldwell.
I'm Lily Parker.
I'm Betsy Davis.
I'm Patricia Toledo, or Patricia Toledo.
Thank you.
I'm Jessica Seascreen.
Okay, and if we could keep going with the commissioners so everyone knows who each other is.
Oh, why don't you introduce yourself?
George Rhodey.
Juan Carlos Valle. I'm Mike Clark.
Jim Garner.
Pete Kearns.
Tamara Miller.
Caitlin Lang.
Carter Hawley.
Ethan Reynolds. Jesse Larkey.
James Matthew. Bob Wilmer.
We won't hold you to all those names.
I have to say, Mr. Reynolds, you're impressing. That's my maiden name.
Thank you.
So why don't at first we give each person about 2 minutes to say what their main reason for being here is today, and then we can start the discussion. I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to express why they're here today.
And I'll start. I'm a member of LULAC, a new organization, and I am chair of the Racial Profiling Committee. That is my main concern and the reason I'm here.
Thank you.
I'm Betsy. I'm also with LULAC, and I am the co-chair of the Racial Profiling Committee.
I'm also with LULAC. I'm in the board committee and the treasurer.
I'm here just to make one comment about the scope project, and I can actually do it in my 2 minutes. I notice it's just about policy and practice. I would really urge you to also put in ordinances so that you can at least consider making recommendations on possible tweaks to some ordinances, because otherwise I think it's not that worthy of your time.
I think I'd keep mine to 2 minutes because it's just a heartfelt thank you. As you know, over the years I've raised suggestions and sometimes critiques of EPD, but when I see two exceptional things that have been accomplished thanks to EPD in recent weeks, I really want to underscore how grateful I am. You may have read in today's Eugene Weekly, there is a little article about the change that was made in retention of police notes taken at the time of a citation or arrest. Back in '99, I understand a policy for some reason, was created that required the destruction of the handwritten notes. That has been rectified. I so commend this department for making that reason and correction. The second thing I want to commend that's not been noted yet in the media, although I had a chance to commend EPD at the Civilian Review Board meeting 2 nights ago. This has to do with the work of EPD officer Greg Magnus, who I understand from another department in another city where he had worked. This is what I was told by another officer. They had an expanded list of fix-it tickets. In my 40 months of nearly daily court observings at municipal court, I often hear people cited for primarily vehicle issues they were unaware of, like a taillight that blew out or dark window tint, where they would say to the judge, "Can't this be dismissed because I fixed the problem?" And judges said, well, really, there's only a couple of things that can be dismissed if you fixed it. So I truly believe that Officer Magnus raising this thought, and now it's a much more expanded list, apparently, of things that people can rectify and fix, and thus not have a spendy ticket. I think that step, and I understand this is being shepherded by Captain Carl Jord, the rollout that will be effective August 1st. I really believe that this single step is going to just do so much to help improve police-community relations. I can't commend the department high enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you all for explaining what brings you here today. So it sounds like a majority of the group is here to discuss our conversation from the last meeting around racial profiling. So why don't we open up that discussion? Do you have thoughts on the topic that you'd like to bring to us? And then we'll go back and forth.
Unfortunately, I wasn't at your last meeting, so I don't know what the discussion was around the table at that time. But I did attend the meeting with a group of officers on procedure, and they're trying to initiate a new system, computer system. And I had concerns there. Because as a citizen and as a member of LULAC and chair of the Racial Profiling Board, my intentions are to protect the rights of communities of color. And I know that the police intentions are, one, to protect their rights and the greater community. As a native Eugenian, I've seen a lot of history here. Some good and some not so good. I've seen a lot of changes, some good and some not so good. And I can remember when crime was announced and it said African American. As description was given, the area of the crime was given, and every African American, and it was male, every African American male that was found on the street was stopped and questioned. Whether the perpetrator was 6'2", 6'5", 4'11", if you were African American, you were stopped. Because the assumption was, it could have been you. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing much change in that policy. If Fred Myers is robbed on River Road, an African American male can be stopped in the Cal Young area because he's African American. There was a crime on River Road that involved an African American. However, by the same token, from my experience, if a crime has been committed on River Road and the perpetrator is white and the description is given, all that is taken to effect, and River Road is quartering off until they assess the fact that the perpetrator has left that area. But nobody on Coburg Road has to worry about getting stopped unless there is a call or some information. That's my concern as an African American and as a mother of an African American male who was also born and raised in Eugene. It was my duty to educate my son to survive in an environment that is sometimes hostile to him. And when he became emotionally disturbed and had a problem, his habit was to run. And so if he had a fight with his girlfriend at 4 o'clock in the morning, he'd go running. I tell him you can't do that, because they're going to ask after the incident why you were there. Nobody's going to assume that a black man running down the street at 4 o'clock in the morning is running because he's trying to sort his emotional feelings. He didn't understand that for a long time. But when you're 18, 6'4", and almost 300 pounds, and you're running at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's automatically suspicious if you're African American. So my concern is to make sure that in collaborating on this endeavor, and at the meeting I said, as you go on with your research here, and one of the officers at the table said, as we go on, it was not my expectation that it was going to become a we, because I hadn't been invited to become the we. I don't want my name on any report that will rubber stamp Lily Parker was there, and that made it okay because she's an African American woman. Because I'm here to look out for the concerns of the community, and that is not anger, that's passion for me. This is my home. I'm born here. I'm still here. So I only wanted to get better for those coming behind me.
How do you follow that?
You don't. That's great.
Gosh, it always go before Lily. I'm part of LULAC. You can't tell, but I have American Indian, African American, and European ancestry. Don't let the eyes and the hair fool you. I see the world, though, through my American Indian ancestors' eyes. For some reason, that's how I was born. So that's why I joined Juan Carlos. That's why I'm with Lily on the Racial Profiling Committee, because I see where the power of privilege comes in. And it's something that, you know, my ancestors faced at the very beginning of colonization. The descendants of slaves, the American Indians, their voice was never part of the development of this nation. In fact, it was purposefully seen as lesser than human. Therefore, you don't have a say. And what we fail to realize as a police commission, you know, and as a police department, and as the Justice Department, which I'm dealing with right now, we don't understand how many generations of European Americans got to set all of those definitions and parameters in those institutions without any input. And so we're here to help the police understand where that power of privilege can still seep in. Because from my community standpoint, we are not post-colonization, we are still in it. But it's very subtle. And if I can in 30 seconds tell you a story of a colleague, I'm a scientist at Oregon Research Institute. You want to talk about a dominant worldview institution. Had a lot of time to develop their definitions. I had a colleague who's a very dominant worldview scientist. She came into my office after the weekend and she says, okay, I'm almost embarrassed to tell you this. She says, I'm reading a book over the weekend. And I was reading along. You know how we form the story in our heads when we read? We see the characters, and she's really good. She says, but I turned the last page of the book, and it shocked me because the character was a white man. She had superimposed a black man onto that character because of things that were happening and the ways that this character was responded to. It was a black man, and she was perfectly happy reading that story. It fit really well for her. She turned the last page, and only then did she realize her mistake. I said, you're lucky, because what we don't understand is we all walk through this world. Police officers do it, teachers do it, overlaying, unaware that we're doing it, these constructs. And it tends to deal with race as a skin color. And we don't even know we're doing it, but we don't get to turn the last page of that book until we leave this earth, and then it's too late. So that's why Lily and I work together, because I can take anything that you produce and I can go, wow, there's the power of privilege right there. Could we maybe work on that set of words? Because we don't realize how laws have that privilege that we don't realize can seep in, and all of a sudden it works for the white man, but not for people of color. So that's where I am. I don't do it to be angry. I don't do it to confront. I just say, hey, it's there. You know, and if we don't talk about the elephant in the room, we're never going to end racial disparities. So that's why I'm here. There you go. That was my story to follow the screen.
Has Juan Carlos shared with you the particular area in the policy that was of concern to him?
I am sure,
We're sure he did, but we're.
now,
Does anyone have a copy of that? It would be pertinent to this conversation.
We have to be highlighted.
But not our recommendations, it's the original policy.
Okay, so,
To follow her act.
Go, Patricia. Thank you very much.
yeah.
She was very good too.
So subsection 3 on that first page is specifically the area of contention and probably why you came here today. So if you could take a couple seconds and look that over, or you can do it later. But I think what would be helpful to this group is to hear what areas are concerning and any potential ways that you could see to improve that section. But in the meantime, does anyone have any thoughts, comments, questions? It's open for dialogue. Go ahead, Jane.
Well, I do just share just a little story real quick. It's not concerning directly with racial profiling, but it does extend the conversation. My wife, Lawanda, she works for Umpqua Bank. She's been working there for about 6 years now. Customers come in and go out. Yesterday, a gentleman by the name of Fred Binion drove up to the window. You know him?
I know, yeah.
Okay. Fred drove up to the service window and engaged Lawanda. She, how can I help you? The same way. And he announced that he wanted to make a deposit. Make a withdrawal. She asked him, well, do you want a counter check or do you have a check? He said he has a check. So she proceeded on, conducted the transaction. Then she said, is there anything else? And he said, can I get the balance on my account? Sure, no problem. Gave him the balance on his account. She said, okay, sir, do you have anything else? And he asked her, he said, yeah, do you shine shoes? This is Fred Binion. So it's not constructed directly with the police officer, it's the mentality of the individual. I am completely confident of the training that EPD has its department do, and that they are very well aware about the effects of racial profiling. Now, does it happen? I can't say for certain that it doesn't happen. I know there's a history of it happening. But I know for a fact that Chief Kearns is adamantly, strongly involved with the prevention of this. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important for us as a community to come together and work on those issues like that. Because you don't have to go out and seek discrimination, racial injustice, or bigotry. It'll find you because it's relevant. It's up to us individually when we are interacting with people to treat people with dignity and respect. And I think that this particular policy that we reviewed is working towards that. Is it 100%? No, because bigotry and racial discrimination and stuff is in the minds of the individual and not necessarily an entire organization. However, there are organizations that do teach that and preach that. I don't think that EPD is that organization. If it was, it's moving away from it. And I'm certain that one day we'll get there. But it's a step-by-step process, and it begins with the individual, as you well know.
Mr. Manning, can I address your comments?
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate them, I honestly do. As a member of this community since 1940, and knowing, at least by name, every police chief who has served Eugene, and being very close to Oakley Glenn, who was police chief here for a long time. Also knowing that when I was a child, if a policeman saw me on the street, he'd say, Lily Reynolds, what are you doing? Because they knew who we were as member of the then Negro community. And every police officer in Eugene, Oregon was white. I had a healthy respect for the police department because my parents taught me to have that kind of respect after they immigrated here from Shreveport, Louisiana. Being a black man born in 1893, my father knew consequences of a black person standing up and asserting his or herself in the face of white authority. So I understand what you're saying. With due respect to Chief Kearns, whom I have met and worked with his father at Eugene Hospital and Clinic. Chief Kearns is privileged and male and white. And yes, he can have a heart as pure as gold. Until you understand that skin color creates divisiveness. Until you understand that being white gives you power and a feeling of superiority. And yes, that is the culture of our country. Even beyond that, it's a subculture because we're dealing with the police department. And even though there are people of color who serve in that capacity and in that organization, they are also members of that subculture. And when I talked to an Asian officer who belonged to the Eugene Police Department about racial profiling, he said, well, I'll tell you this, Lily. Our main goal is to go home every night. So if I see a 15 to 25-year-old African-American male walking down 7th Street with sagging pants, yes, I'm going to pull him over. And I said, I have a man of color talking to me about another person of color with that same mentality. So I understand what you're trying to say. And I am not saying that the police department is racist. What I am saying is, with diversity comes new cultures and new understandings, if it's allowed to grow. White privilege is not something anybody asked for. It's inherited. You couldn't give it away. That's what I want you to understand, but you can understand it. And you can use it in an empowering manner that allows you to pass me on the street. I may not recognize you because the majority of this population looks like the majority of the people sitting in this room, but you'd recognize me because there's only 2,625 African Americans in Lane County if I haven't got those numbers backwards. So if you pass me on the street, what is the crime of saying, good afternoon, Lily, or hello, Lily, or even just smiling and nodding and acknowledge that you see me and you know who I am? Happens too many times that I see people on the street that I recognize and try to acknowledge and they turn their back on me because they don't want their friends to know that they may know an African-American woman in town. So there is a problem which stems from this, and I will shut up because I like expressing myself.
Me too.
I am trying to build a bridge between the police department and the community. Yes, there's a breach of trust, and it's valid. It is valid. And you know what? The police department can't build that bridge because they created the breach a long time ago. And nobody has been able to make a crossing. I'm not here to create havoc. I'm here to bring about peace. And any way I can help to do that, I'm willing to do it. You have got to, and I'll say this to the police commission because I just read back your word, you're not trusted. You have got to have an introduction into community. And you just can't come up and shake my hand and think that I can introduce you and that I would introduce you. It's called relationships. You've got to build relationship and trust in order to make an inroad. In order to serve me, how are you going to serve me if I don't trust you? What makes you think you can make policy and procedure that's going to make me feel comfortable if I don't trust you? How are you going to take care of my needs when you don't even bother to talk to me and ask me what my needs are? And there has to be a voice, and there has to be a connection, and there has to be a relationship. My dad always taught me there ain't no man on this earth better than you. Ain't no man on this earth who can do any more for you than you can do for yourself. Find your voice and use it. When I leave this earth, I can't leave you anything behind but a good name. But God being my helper, I will do that. And I will say to you, I have nothing to offer but my Father's name. But I trust it. And that's why I say to you, when you make policies and you say, we will do this together, My father's name is important to me. And I've come to kind of like Parker too. So when my name goes down in black and white, I want my integrity to be attached to my name. Now I'm done.
Well, you know what? This is a great first start. That's what I gotta say. So, here's the situation. Just want to update everyone. We have 3 minutes left in this conversation. 3. So,
We didn't hear from, would you like to speak? You didn't get a 2-minute wrap.
Well, it's okay.
Yeah.
This is my first time. I can take another opportunity another time.
We have 3 minutes.
Thank you.
well, so basically what I want to do is open up. If you would like to extend this conversation, you're gonna have to do it now. If not, then I will let one more person speak. James,
Yeah, I'd like to extend
for how
the
long?
conversation another 5 minutes.
I'll second.
Second,
Okay,
I've got a
does
couple
anyone?
of questions. Have you got a queue going? I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Does anyone, yeah, I do.
Okay.
Does anyone oppose? Okay, so the queue is Juan Carlos, and then Mike. Go ahead.
And then George down here.
We won't get to you probably.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the extra minutes. To all of you, thank you for coming. Your voice is not only important, but I see this as a gift. Somebody told me a long time ago, be careful what you ask for because you might get it. And that's exactly what I was asked to do last month, and
So
I hope
glad I
that-
got it, Juan Carlos.
I hope the police commission understands what is being presented to you. What I take it as unfortunate is that we have members of the community that are highly respected and people that I look up to. And they bring a lot of perspectives to this commission that we have to be taking notes. And for our commission to narrow it down to one topic, that's unfortunate. We have to focus on the message that's being presented to us. So, again, if we gonna be asking every person focus on specific item, we're gonna be losing out on the specific message that's being presented to us. And I don't wanna lose sight of that tonight. And it's not directed at you, Madam Chair, it's directed at us as a body. We need to understand when people come, and that struggle to come, we don't have a lot of visitors. But when they do, we need to be able to understand the message. The pearls of wisdom are not given to us every day. As I see even in the recent survey from officers and non-officers, they want us to understand the operations, but also be reflective of our community. Certainly, these are folks that I know that reflect much of the community that I see every day. I hope that understanding the perspectives and understanding that we need to respect their experiences and where they come from, where all of us come from, will be something that all of us will take away. And again, not try to pin anyone to a specific subject, because that actually deters anyone, including me, participating. Thank you for the time.
Mike?
Thank you very much. Our job is to make sure we make good recommendations with a community, I use that word in quotations, mind you, sense of the variety of values in our community, so that the chief makes the very best policy for everybody. And that means we need to hear, like Juan Carlos mentions, from everybody. And we need to hear the stuff that's hard to hear. And we need to hear the stuff we don't understand. I'm trying to understand something. I served 2 years on the Human Rights Commission. And I did a lot of conversations about something. And I appreciate very much your willingness and your candor to talk with it. Here's what I learned from the perspective of someone with your life's experience. Is white privilege a blind spot?
Let me explain it this way, and I have 2 examples, but time is short. I had the privilege of having dinner maybe 2 months ago with a young man that I went from grade school to high school with, a young white male. Not young, we're the same age now. And Mike looked at me and said, you know, Lily, when we were in school, I had no idea of the racial climate of Eugene. It just wasn't something shared with us.
Right.
We just told, you don't come to our house, and I don't go to your house. We could mingle at school, but it couldn't leave the school grounds. When I became an adult and I started traveling the world, in third world country, he's built a dental and health clinic in Peru, and he raises alpacas. He said, and I saw the disparity, and then I started looking back at my youth. And he said, I was blind. And I said, at the same time, so was I. But as we became older and we began to see reality, my reality was a black community. I only had to embrace the white community while I was at school. I could go home to my black community. It no longer exists. And so now we have little black kids who have no idea of what it means to be raised in a black community. The other example of white privilege, a colleague at work couldn't understand white privilege, and we were discussing it, and I said, let me give you an example. Your father and my father are both uneducated. First grade education. They're both janitors. A patron comes along who sees potential. Each get a patron who takes them under their wing, cleans them up, buys them a business suit, a briefcase, gives them a little knowledge, and there's a job opening, entry level. And he sends both these men to apply for the job. Everything equal in Eugene, Oregon, who's gonna get the job?
She asking me. I don't know.
Oh.
And that's an honest answer.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
You know what? That's skirting the issue.
I don't think so.
How long have you lived here?
30 years.
All right. All things equal,
Yeah.
the white man's gonna get the job. I can tell you from a personal perspective.
Right?
I went through, during the civil rights era, to apply for Pacific Northwest Bell, and they said, you're the only person that ever passed our test 100%.
Right?
Unfortunately, we can't hire you because you're overweight. Now, today I would have a suit,
Right.
but back there, it was a gatekeeper to keep me out.
Yeah.
You see, I have a lot of history. Yes, white privilege is blind because we're so used to the status quo. You probably didn't even know you had that word white privilege until it became a buzzword, and everybody became afraid of it. Diversity and white privilege. Well, I talked about diversity at the University of Oregon when we did introduction. We brought the freshmen in with their parents.
Yeah.
And I had this 700, 800, 900 people sitting in front of me, and I had to discuss diversity. You know how I phrased it? If you are a parent and you have two children, even if they're the same sex, do you raise them exactly the same way, or do you take their personalities into account?
Sure.
Diversity. So you have one blonde and one brunette. Diversity. Somebody's blue-eyed, somebody's brown-eyed. You got diversity in your house. A man married to a woman, you got diversity. Difference. That's all it is. And that way it takes the sting and the fear out of.
That's a great, I appreciate you saying that to me that way. My kids, by the way, are in the corner over there.
Hello,
I understand.
diversity. Understand.
I appreciate that.
Understand.
Thank you.
Diversity is different, and applying different techniques to the difference. I'm not asking for preference, I'm asking for level playing field.
Thank you for helping me look at something
You're
different today.
welcome.
I
You're
appreciate
welcome. My job is well done then. Thank you for receiving.
And could I just say, I've circled the social constructs where white privilege can come in, and it goes to your comments that, see, white privilege is institutional. And when you have even people of color in the police department, but the policies have been set, they have to follow by those. And it becomes the prevailing for, like, know by whose definition these terms in these policies are being defined. Because 9 times out of 10, it will be defined within the majority worldview. But it's not, we don't ask the questions of by whose definition. So I just would like to caution, to have you ask yourself by whose definition, who gets to define suspicious? Who gets to define proactive? Who gets to define reasonable in reasonable belief? Who gets to define reasonable in reasonable suspicion? Who gets to define those? And if you don't clearly put parameters around that, then they will be what my ancestors would call colonized, but they won't necessarily fit even for the people of color who are in the police department. but they have no voice to call question to it because that's the policy. So my recommendation would be that, we really seriously define those clearly, because there will be those who are racist in every police department. You're going to have those. You're going to have them in every community. You're not going to stop that. But you will have those that will take on definitions that are what we call white privilege, because it's institutional. So that's just my word of caution to the commission and to the police department when you write policies. That's it. So I'm done.
Thank you so much. So unfortunately, at this time, we are out of time. I want to sincerely thank you all for coming. Like Juan Carlos said, we rarely get visitors, and you brought a lot of important knowledge to the table today. So we really
I'm
appreciate
gonna
it.
leave this here because it's got writing on it.
And I apologize.
Will you be around for break?
You're welcome to keep the
If you want us to hang around, we'll hang around until break.
I would love that.
So,
Trust me. Okay, but I would love to have a conversation.
okay, everyone.
Give me a call.
I really appreciate that.
Mr. Manning, when you said you were was he an ophthalmologist, a doctor?
I believe so.
Well, let me, in order to salvage, let me say, I want everybody to hear this, please. When we speak of Fred Binion, when my daughter died, my daughter went to school with Dr. Binion's children. And when she died, he came to my house and sat on the floor at my feet, expressing his condolences and telling me wonderful stories about my daughter and her interaction with his children and growing up with his children. And my daughter left a daughter behind. And he said, if she ever needs braces, any kind of corrective surgery to her mouth, you let me know, and I'll take care of it. And he wrote my granddaughter a check so that she could have a wonderful Christmas. Both he and his wife came to my house. So yes, it happens. White privilege steps out. And like Paula Dean, he might have said something that was out of line. But I'll tell you, I'll go to war for Fred Binion because he showed me God's love. And God's love is what I received from him. And I just want to say that because I don't want anybody to leave with the impression he's human.
You know, that's the thing.
Sorry, I'm gonna have to cut this off. It's just gonna, I don't see a good way to.
No, I didn't give him a pass.
Sure you did.
He
Yes,
gave
ma'am.
me an opportunity
Okay,
to give me a
sorry.
pass.
You gave him a
because he
pass.
gave
Sorry,
me
Mr. Parker, I'm gonna have to cut you off.
Lily, thank you. Nice to meet you.
Thank you,
Nice to meet
everyone,
you,
for
too.
coming. Don't make it the last time you're here. Come back, please.
All right. Young man, I will give you a call.
Yeah, yes, I love to talk.
Okay, everyone, back to order now. Okay, thank you everyone for engaging in that conversation. I know these topics can be difficult. So thank you very much for that.
Cool.
So something to think about moving forward. Okay, I'm not gonna talk over people, I just won't do it. I've had way too much coffee. Okay.
Such thing.
So, yeah. Okay, so something to think about moving forward is how you want to continue having community dialogues. I know there was a viewpoint brought up that we might not want to ask them for specific feedback on policy, and that is a great thought. I like having these broad discussions, but also I know that my personal brain works well on mulling over specific work products that we work on too. So finding that balance of what you all want to accomplish moving forward is going to be pretty crucial. And we haven't figured it out yet, but I just wanted to leave that so you guys can figure it out moving forward. Okay, so now we are going to enter into the work session, and in the packet there are two sections, videotaping events and civil disturbances, and I'm going to turn it over to Lieutenant Reynolds. I just want to make sure I got the title right. And he'll lead us through his section.
Okay, so the two policies we have are the ones we looked at last time. There's a couple of changes. A reminder, when we're talking about the videotaping of situations, events, this policy does not apply to the ICV or in-car videos or the taser cameras. Those are covered by their own policies, which are referenced there in the introduction. So this specifically is talking about the use of videotape at places like demonstrations or if you were at a major crime scene, something like that, where we want to document the ongoings there. And you can see the only changes that were recommended were the striking of Part 1, Sub A, Sub 3, and Sub 4. All of Sub 3 was struck, and then in Sub 4, we just mandated, basically by striking the first part of that sentence, mandated that a date and time stamp will show up in any video documentation, or video footage, actually, is the terminology there. And those were the only changes to that policy.
Interesting.
Yeah, Tim.
So, I was reading through this policy and I kept seeing the word videotaping repeated, and I said to myself, is that the right word for the media that we're using today? Because I don't know exactly what the correct word is, and I know it's not talking about in-car video, which I think is a data upload, correct me if I'm wrong, but it occurred to me that that may not be the correct term, videotape, to use. I don't know if audio video recording would be more appropriate.
Digital recording.
Digital recording. Well, it's also, I'm assuming, an audio recording, which I think video assumes audio, but maybe that needs to be said as well, I don't know. That was the only comment that I had, besides the changes. Thanks.
Yeah, Mike, and then Juan Carlos, and then Bob.
Digital covers both. It refers to the capacity of electronic. It could also be changed to more simply electronic recording, because almost all devices are, unless I'm mistaken. It's funny, even the word footage refers to actual tape. It's not there anymore.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Would anyone like to suggest that change?
No.
Okay, cool. Juan Carlos and then Bob.
No, I was just going to suggest a change to put that maybe in the definition at the beginning of what, you could leave videotaping, but if you maybe put that as a definition at the beginning, which you're.
We still do deal with some
defining it
videotape. It's video documentation, maybe.
So maybe
Video
something-
recording?
Video recording.
That way you don't have to change the whole thing. If you just put in the definition, then you know what it is all the way through.
Video
I
recording.
don't know. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Juan Carlos and then Bob.
Thank you, ma'am, for honoring the queue. I don't have specific changes to offer. I do have several questions to ask staff. I noticed previously when I was a proud member of the Policy Screening Review Committee, we will get all the policies that we will compare. At some point in the last cycle, we actually had comparisons, this is from this policy, this other policy. I kind of missed that, but it used to compare and to see where it might make sense for us to make recommendations. As it stands now, we only have one policy, and therefore I will focus on the specific policy being presented to me. So mostly I will have questions such as on Part 1A, where it says, it starts with the use of videotaping and so on and so forth. The second sentence begins with, these tapes help us to prevent evidence for criminal prosecutions, to evaluate our performance. How does the chief and EPD do that? I'm just curious about, I know that if it is evidence and it's being used to evaluate, how do they do that? And really, I'm just curious about how some elements of this policy, in fact, is being followed. So that's question number one. Even on section B, where it says classified as evidence if they contain evidence of a crime, I want to know who reviews that? Who makes the call on, this video that we took from this parade or this event, it may contain criminal activity? Is that the lieutenant? Is that the chief? Those things that I think it would be useful for me to understand it. And
Do you want him to answer those?
I think I would with those two.
Okay, and then you can continue after.
So, to touch on the first one, when we talk about to evaluate performance, if we have, and we'll just use a demonstration as an example, the tapes or footage or recordings, whatever we want to call them now, are lodged as evidence. Okay, those are stored in the evidence control facility. However, we will ask for copies of them, and then depending on what the outcome is, anybody from the chief on down will review them. We'll always have what's called a case agent. So that's the person who is in charge of putting together a criminal case. So if we have a big demonstration and a bunch of people are arrested, it's generally the case agent is one or two detectives from the violent crimes unit, because they're used to putting big case books and managing large cases. They'll review all the footage. They'll then highlight areas of concern, what's evidence, what's not. We'll also look at them, maybe a lieutenant or the training sergeant will go through. If there were some sort of a riot response, the supervisors that are in charge of that type of response will go look at the footage to see what we can do better. We've utilized them several times on the parties that we have on campus where we go and end up arresting people. We'll utilize the footage there to see not only is there evidence of a crime, but are there things that we could have done as an organization better to either resolve it, to expedite it, to just approach the situation in a better manner. So they're regularly used as feedback. And let's see, what was the second question there?
How do you determine and who determines if there was a crime committed in a video?
Oh, okay. And then that's pretty much similar. Is the case agents will go through, or whoever's responsible. If it's a smaller case, the officer will go look at the videotape of their own. They'll determine if something should be looked at by a prosecutor or not. If it's a bigger case, the case agent and the supervisors in charge of managing that case will do that.
I wait for the second round, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Bob and then Jesse.
Yes, two things. One, I think most people know that there are still places that use videotape for surveillance. They don't actually use CDs or hard drives. They actually have tapes that they put in that are 24-hour tapes, and sometimes even less than that. But so we need to keep that in the definitions because they collect those from people from time to time after a crime. And so I would agree that there needs to be a reference to either or videotapes or that type of thing. The thing that I found to be most, I guess, controversial is if you're videotaping a situation where, and actually the paper today made me think about it because the way they wrote the agenda for today, it said videotaping civil disturbances. And I was like, no, that's actually two different things. But anyway, when you are videotaping civil disturbances, the controversy seems to be what happens to the video of people who don't commit a crime and they just happen to be in the tape and be present at the scene. What do you do with that footage? And I think that would be one of the things the community would want to be assured that somebody reviews it after a while and it's destroyed. So I think the policy addresses that, if I'm not mistaken, at the end. I saw that it is reviewed and at some point it is destroyed. And I think that answers my question, but unless Lieutenant Reynolds has something different.
No, that's correct. When we have video that doesn't have any evidence of a crime, then it would be handled just like any other, what would fall into the intelligence community, and that's reviewed and maintained and then disposed of after the appropriate time.
Jesse?
Thank you.
Same question, but do they end up on the police server like ICVs do?
No. Is
that only because of the model of video cameras that are being used right now?
Correct.
So right now, a specific storage medium comes out and that's held, and you can actually put a gummed label on it and handle it like this talks about?
Yeah, basically, because the server is created to document all of our in-car videos, and it's very proprietary. It works just with the co-band system. And so there's no manner, I mean, there are programs out there that are very expensive that we could, download and get to where it'll take all the different mediums and manage all that. But that's all financial. Otherwise, they're lodged as any other type of evidence right now on whatever the medium is that they're taking on.
Okay, so I guess my only comment would be is if the type of camera that the department uses changes in the future, where you do like a direct download onto a computer, the policy be updated so that the same kind of retention can happen rather than it sitting there forever. And I'm thinking about how good face recognition software is now. It'd just be too easy to run it through and know everybody who was at a protest and what they were doing when.
Gotcha.
Camera?
So I just had a question about, so this policy applies to handheld video recording devices. And the reason that they're used in addition to in-car video is because the angle or the opportunity for using in-car video, because it's mounted in the car, I'm assuming, is not conducive to what needs to be recorded in the cases where this policy applies. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, that was my only question. Thanks.
Jim and then me. And then Carlos.
When you're videotaping, who does the videotaping?
It's generally sworn officers.
Okay. So does that constitute police presence?
I would assume so, yes. I'm trying to think of the situation where it
Well,
would.
and
but-
that's what I want to make sure of. So, again, I think I brought this up before, and 3A and 3B seem to contradict each other. One says it'll be destroyed within 30 days, but then the other one says if there's police presence, it's 30 months, which would seem to mean that it should be 30 months at all times, because by your definition, there's always going to be a police presence if it's videotaped.
Yeah, we definitely, deja vu, we talked about
Yes, we
this.
talked about this, yeah.
So we're still looking for an answer to that.
Well, doesn't B refer to videotapes related, which contain information relevant to a charge of police misconduct?
Well, it says, or which were taken at events where police action was taken, including the presence, not just where action was taken, but just the presence of.
Uniformed
That's,
officers.
at least that's how I'm reading it. Now, maybe I'm misinterpreting that.
Because I think what we're getting at in B, now that you remind me of that, is that there are situations where a criminal case may be going on where videotaping would occur that does not catch any criminal act. So it would fall under the intelligence type of realm that we need to worry about disposing of. So for instance, if a detective is conducting surveillance on something and they have a reason to videotape because they think they're going to catch a criminal act, they don't catch a criminal act, that falls under the 30 days. We got to get rid of that. We can't hold on to that. But there's no uniformed officers, there's no police presence, nothing like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if there's a better way. I mean, if I have confusion with that, I've got to think that others do, and they're not going to follow what yours, the logic that you're following with it.
Jim, are you thinking the person videotaping constitutes police presence?
And that's why I asked him to begin with, was who does the videotaping, and he said it is an officer, a sworn officer,
Well,
and then he did say the
and then I just looked further down at B, because then it specifically defines the uniformed personnel.
Yeah, it does say uniformed.
Uniformed officers.
So I mean, because I could see uniformed officers taking video of where no crime committed, and then that getting destroyed by the definition in A. That's where I would be. Because A says if there's no crime, no police action, and there's no crime, it's going to be destroyed in 30 days.
But B says 6 months.
B says 30 months.
Which seems crazy.
That's rude.
Is that typo? Did we figure that out? That was my original
Oh, maybe you
question.
retained for the event.
It is about police misconduct.
The or.
But it
There's
says
an
including
or.
just their presence.
We're talking about police misconduct on the
Right.
30 months versus a regular public event.
So, and that's where, and, because I understand what you're getting at, but to me, it's fairly clear where it talks about including the presidents. I mean, once we have uniformed personnel there, you know, it's.
But isn't that who's doing the videotaping? You've got-
No, that's what I'm saying.
That's why I got
If-
the
if
wanted the
it-
definition.
If I've got an event where just a detective is sitting in a car and they're filming 2 blocks down the street, hoping they're gonna
Catch
get the
something,
kilos of
right.
cocaine moving back and forth between the cars, and that doesn't happen, well, then they can lodge that for the prosecutor to review, but it's got that 30-day window on it. So it's gotta go away, because there's no police, you know. Now, if they get out and are walking around and they're in uniform, or, you know, a
So-
patrol car pulls up, then,
So if it's a uniformed person doing that same thing, doing the filming, then you have to keep that for 30 months?
I think that where it would be, well, that would be a good question, because if they're
Hence my-
confined in a building.
Hence my confusion.
So, because a presence would be as if their presence is known, would be what I think the interpretation the city attorney would have on that. If their presence is known, so if they're in a building and nobody knows they're there and they're videotaping, then I think you're in that 30-day window. The police auditor may have a different take on that, but I think that's probably what the city attorney said, and that's where we'd go for an actual definition if we were in that situation.
Okay. I'm just trying to avoid
Yeah, I see
the confusion
where you're getting at.
and getting rid of a tape maybe before. I would hate to have something come up and say that this tape should have been kept for 30 months
Mhm.
when it was tossed in 30 days. And especially with what's happening with the with the unit right now that's storing that.
Right.
I would rather see something kept longer than shorter.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying, just as a safety. But
Mhm.
if you're confident that that's how this would be interpreted, okay.
I'll
But I can see there's confusion just in our room.
Well, yeah, and they, I'll double check on that with how they process out there
Okay.
in relation to this.
Looks like
Could we
there's some
have
questions in your
minutes?
head too.
Oh, I've got a bunch of them.
Okay, so I have myself, Mike, Bob, and James. My question is, I didn't see any mention of when you should videotape. I see when you shouldn't, but I'm just curious, why is there nothing about, here's maybe when you should?
That's a good question. It's really, as a general rule, more determined by the situations. I don't know that, there's a lot of diverse situations that we would want to be capturing, and so I don't know what we would want to necessarily put even a limitation on there, which it feels like we would be doing if we were putting a list.
Okay. I was just curious. Yeah.
Am I jumping in on the queue?
I have the floor, so go for it.
This was prepared in the, at the time when we were dealing with the Anarchist Weekly. So the question about whether we should wasn't an issue. We were videotaping constantly, and also when we were experiencing more and more riots in the West University neighborhood. So we received some complaints about videotaping at public gatherings in meetings that raised concerns about police intervening or being present or capturing people's faces, like somebody mentioned a little bit ago, when there wasn't a good reason to. That's what drove, I think, the development of this.
Okay. So this is used for, you said it's also used for surveillance, right?
That very rarely
okay.
would this apply. I mean, the amount of situations that this policy applies to are very few and far between compared to what we're doing.
Okay.
The majority of, and that's the whole basis for our in-car video system, is to really capture a whole bunch, not only police conduct and how we're performing, that type of stuff, but really it takes over a lot of what we used to do under this policy, than the ICB does.
Okay. Cool. I have Mike, and then Bob, and then James.
Okay, I'm going to twist everything up a little bit here, I think. Everybody with a smartphone, please hold it up just for a second so we can see this. I think how many people at the table? Okay. So I got a camera here. Pretty good one, too. So what happens when we get to the day, and I suppose I'm going to speak hypothetically here, when we have a department with the capacity to retain individually submitted videos from citizens who want to help with crime protection somehow, and they're somehow motivated to upload this video to something that the police have the capacity to hold on to. If they see people prowling around in their neighborhood that looks suspicious, that looks like something that you might want to have at a future point, and when you're doing some kind of investigation, I don't see in what's it here in B3,
30 days.
Where if you've got, for example, and I witnessed this the other day. I didn't have my phone with me, but I was dating this young lady a while ago, and I was over at her house, and these guys are walking around in the neighborhood, and they're checking front doors. Watched them, okay? And they're checking garage doors. And if I'd have had this, I'd have been out there like this, so you guys could see who the guys were, because it was in West University. Now, from what I'm reading here, it sounds like you're going to get rid of that stuff, and I personally, as a citizen, would be much happier if you held on to it, because I think it would be easier for you to be able to have collective information about a pattern of behavior that might go towards solving a burglary if you had it. Can you tell me how this is designed to deal with that?
Yes, and because that happens now. We get that's the exact situation that occurs.
Right.
And we have even more creative people who've been ripped off that mount trail cams around there.
Yeah. I know where 3
and
duck
that kind
blinds are in downtown.
But what that does then is that information comes to us as part of a police report.
Okay.
So whether it's suspicious circumstances or criminal trespass, whatever the venue is there. If we have a crime, people's car clouds.
Right.
Those then are being submitted in relation to a criminal report. In that 30-day window, then it's going to be reviewed by a case officer and looked at by a prosecutor. Do we have a case? Is this prosecutable? Is it not? Do I have probable cause here to proceed with this case? In that case, I get to keep it longer. I don't have to get rid of it at 30 days. If it's somebody walking down the sidewalk, we are going to be restricted by.
If it's somebody checking doors and windows and casing something, you still got to get rid of it?
I would say not at that point. Then you're at reasonable suspicion, and you can probably take an attempted burglary report when somebody's going up and trying doors.
Okay. Yeah, I think we're heading into a new frontier with the capacity for citizens to become, and I'll use this term in quotations, deputized. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure, but that this may need some adjustment as technology changes.
Oh, absolutely.
Changes.
Okay, we have Bob and then James.
Okay, 2 things. One, I see in 3B, I see that what I read, when I understand it, is that if a police officer is in the video, meaning he's within the frame of the video that you're shooting, then that should be retained longer, because even if there's nothing that happens in the crowd, you can bet that somebody might also allege that the officer didn't do what he was supposed to do based on when he walked by or something. So maybe inattention or inactivity by the police would be alleged. So I think it's important to keep anything where a uniformed officer is in the frame, and we need to keep that in there. Fine tuning it or making it a little bit more, I got no heartburn with that. The other thing is, what Mike is talking about is, I used to volunteer to help do this, the videotape retrieval. We'd go to businesses that were robbed, or they had larcenies, or use a credit card, somebody's credit card was used, and they got a picture of them at the register, and we'd get the tape, we'd bring it in, and the evidence unit would then separate it out and get an image of the person, see if they could recognize them, and those kind of things involve crimes. So it's evidence. So those are okay. I'm not sure I'm okay with somebody videotaping someone walking through the neighborhood and saying this guy's suspicious and having the police keep this guy's picture on file without having committed a crime. So the key, I think, is we have to keep it to criminal activity only, not just people that don't look like they fit in the neighborhood. I mean, we got people dying over that literally today. So, we need to know that it's only related to a crime, and that's the only reason we would keep it. And that's what I hope this policy says, at least as I see it. It doesn't allow the keeping of any material more than 30 days that would involve just a peaceful walk through the neighborhood.
James?
Yeah, my comments are very short. One of the things is that there is a number of issues and stuff that seem to have surfaced on this, and one is the relationship between the city attorney's office as their interpretation of these particular sections and stuff. So I would like, before I cast a vote in favor of moving ahead, I would like to make sure that you get that input from city attorneys so that I'm comfortable with this is something that you can actually do. And it's something that they're comfortable with should they have to use any kind of prosecutory actions.
Jesse?
No.
Claire?
So other folks have addressed some of the things I was going to mention, which was
video taken by other sources and submitted to the police. And I agree with Bob about if there's an allegation of criminal activity and it's attached to an actual investigation, then it should be kept. But if it's just general atmosphere and not implicating potential criminal activity, then it should be purged. So I guess my only comment at this point is there any concern about the use of the term videotape, considering it's not an accurate term any longer?
That was the kickoff.
We just did that. We're gonna get a couple.
I had a feeling that I missed that one. Is it just, are we just gonna keep using it because it's a
We'll
term of
update
art?
it.
Video recordings. Has to be
Juan
both,
Carlos?
some still.
Yes, right.
Yeah, both Bob and Commissioner Manning mentioned the two things that I'm concerned about. I would also be more comfortable if this is run by those who know the ins and outs of the law. There's a couple of holes in this policy that I think I'm going to submit so that I don't take a lot of time, and in terms of liability to the city, we need to make sure that that's also covered. There's language here that says may lead to the need for police action and so on and so forth. Now, keep in mind that the filters that citizens have, they may see somebody in the neighborhood and to them may be suspicious. They're gonna videotape that person and they're gonna send it to you. Oh, I saw this person walking down the street. I saw Juan Carlos 11 at night, so I thought he was suspicious and I want you to investigate. So I wonder, those tapes that presumably there's no criminal activity, do they become public records? Can I get a copy of any of that?
I don't know the answer to that.
And the last thing is, I would encourage you in highly
So
suggest
a video that a citizen submits to us.
any video that's created that has nothing to do with crime, that you're slated to be raised or destroyed within 30 days, do they become public records? Can I get a copy of that? Whether it's somebody who submitted it or it's you making the video.
Everything we do is public. Everything that gets submitted is going to
Somebody
be a
has to
public
know about
record.
it to ask for it.
Right, but
Yeah.
it could be redacted. So there's going to be portions of it that can be redacted and struck or retained because it's in the middle of a criminal case. But everything that the city touches ends up being a public record.
Yeah, and I was thinking along terms of if it's in the process of a criminal investigation, it wouldn't be releasable, but once that case is closed, then it would be releasable. But if there's no nexus to it, then I would assume it's just another document that we have for 30 days, and hopefully you get it before we destroy it.
Under section B, 3B, I do recommend that you keep that section specifically because it does specifically say that if there's any police misconduct, that you want to keep or retain the video for 30 months. I highly encourage for that to remain on the policy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
If you ask, I thought that was curious, the public records idea. So if you ask for the video and it's in a criminal investigation and then it closes after the 30 days, do you immediately destroy it or do you honor my request and then destroy it?
I would say if we've already got the public records request, that would be honored.
Okay.
But if it's, once the case is closed, if the court orders that everything's purged and that type of thing, then I would, if you haven't requested it, it will obviously be gone.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's it for this time.
Okay. Interesting. Right.
Do you guys want to extend time? Do you all? Okay, we won't.
I don't mind being referred to as a guy.
Okay.
The universal term.
Some people are very sensitive to gender pronouns. Okay, so.
I've accepted it, I went there. I
Yeah.
This one's really short.
Sorry, I resemble that.
So, everyone, Tamara.
The next policy on the agenda is really short. It's basically one page. I mean, it is one page. Can I ask to extend for 10 minutes, 5 minutes to talk about that? Because it seems silly to carry it over to next month when we have it in this month's packet and it's one page. I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting for no more than 10 minutes.
Second.
Review the civil disputes policy.
Second.
Okay, discussion, I have discussion. I would just say that if you're gonna do that, you should make a landing place for this last topic, either continue it or kill it, do something with it, and then move on to that one.
I'll amend my motion to include a resolution for the previous policy.
Okay. And I would also say that you shouldn't rush things. So if you're all prepared to talk about it, do it, but if not, don't do it. Any other discussion?
Okay, I don't understand the motion. May I-
Extension of 10 minutes.
That was the end of the motion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand.
Of extending?
All those opposed, raise your hand. Okay, it passes. Okay, who wants the floor? Claire?
Well, in terms of a resolution to the videotaping, we had a specific request for maybe a brief memo saying what the, sorry. City attorney, thank you. Well, you know, how they would view this language. So I think we would want to try to get that before we take any action on the policy. So then my comment was, I was curious how the civil disputes policy, since it's almost like we don't deal with civil disputes except to be peace officers. I was just curious how this got brought before us, what we thought we were going to contribute to the conversation.
Do we know?
I don't know the answer. I think it was on.
Maybe we didn't know how
last
simple
year.
it was when we decided to put it on the agenda.
The commission asked for it to be put on.
Okay. That's a legitimate reason.
You're not on the commission.
Number 3.
I don't know.
It seems like a very straightforward policy around, we make sure people aren't going to hurt each other, and that's about it.
Does anyone have anything they would like to say about civil disputes? Because if not, we're just going to have discussion.
Yeah, and we'll have a question.
Yeah.
Then in the last paragraph, it talks about, not recommending anybody in particular firms or anything else, but I wondered if in these neighborhood disputes, if the police provide maybe a little handout with fact sheet with these mediation organizations, plural, not one, but all of them, that they may be able to contact to kind of cool things down and get together and work out neighborhood disputes that might otherwise escalate into problems later on. I don't know. I just wonder if that's something that this policy would include, but I think not, because it seems to suggest that you can't, individual companies, can't recommend individual companies.
And that's actually a good catch, because as you can see, this is from 1993, and since then we've actually, city has a contract with Community Mediation Services, and that's where we refer those type of disputes. So we'll get that updated.
Okay, good reason to bring this up.
Good smart.
Anything else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is it you wanted the city attorney to review about the videotaping situation?
You want to speak to James or you?
It's some of the language we were talking about up regarding, what is that, videotaping subsection alpha. And some of the language is not clear as to the intent in regards to how city attorney may view those. So my recommendation, and Clara, she just did the same thing, was to have city attorney take a look at that and make sure that the language and stuff is, because there's so much, everybody's got different questions about how they're interpreting it.
Under 1A? Okay.
B3.
Sorry.
3B, yeah.
Yeah, that was the question.
B3A and
Yeah.
B3B.
Okay.
I have a question about the civil disputes policy. So I was thinking of a situation where there was a piece of property that belonged to a person in another person's home. They wanted to get it back. The person said, no, I'm not giving it to you. They called the police. The police said, that's a civil dispute, we're not getting involved. And this policy follows that. But at what point would the police become involved? If the person whose property it was went to that person's house and said, I'm not leaving until I get my property, and someone called 911, would the police show up then?
Yeah, well, yes. We're going to show up to prevent, especially if there's any discussion of a dispute or, aggression, fear, that kind of stuff. The piece that's theirs, if they're standing on the sidewalk and they're saying, I want my stuff back, then there's nothing illegal with that. If they're standing up on the person's front porch, then you end up with the trespassing issue. So there's a lot of variables, a lot of parameters that would depend on what type of response we have.
Okay, thanks.
Is that why when you call 911 and your crazy neighbors, they're like, have you heard them say any violent terms or something? I question all the time when I call the police on my crazy neighbors. Is that why they do that? To figure out,
Determine what kind of response you need, priority.
Okay. He should use different language then, huh? Yeah, guess so.
Clark got that Winchester out again.
Yeah, I know. Okay, any more discussion? Juan Carlos.
So this civil dispute policy seems to be pretty straightforward also. My only concern is not so much about passing it through, it's my understanding of at the retreat, we're talking about bringing the policy, work on it, but then not approve it at that meeting, that we will continue at the next meeting. Maybe I misunderstood that piece. But in this particular policy, if we are updating something, which I think we should, even as a government employee, we used to be told not to offer and make any recommendations or referrals. And now we're saying, as long as you say, here's a list of entities and not specific, oh, go to this one, they're good, because then you become liable. But I think that can be a part of this, carefully crafted, that reflects, what's going on today. So I'm very comfortable with that. But what I'm not comfortable though, and this is not just for this policy, but we don't get to see the policy, even with the language that we're asking. So we're saying, okay, here we go, this is simple enough, I think I'm safe. But I don't get to see the actual, what you end up putting in there. Is that something that we need to worry about? Perhaps not. But I also want to call it to the attention of the table, because it will be important so that if the police commission is seeing a policy and the community is saying, oh, well, the police commission saw this policy, and they say it's okay, it's got to be a mechanism that doesn't take 20 years down the road to review what was actually done.
I think that, and this will address your first comments that you opened with about the comparison of policies. As you all know, we've been in somewhat of a void of resources when it comes to this office. We are making some organizational changes, so next month there will be a new sergeant here with me for you folks to enter or to meet. And so I think our process will be changing a little bit, and I think you guys will be happy with that. So if we can bear with us just a little bit longer, I think you'll see, be pleased with some of the changes we're planning. So.
Good. And your other question, Juan Carlos, we were going to do 2 meetings, and you would bring up the policy, and then the next one you would make a decision. Then we kept it to 1. That's why.
I see.
Yeah. James?
That's okay, I'll pass.
So, I'm not in favor of seeing it twice because and waiting to make a decision, because that takes up so much time. And, if it's time that's due, we can always choose to do that on an individual policy basis, because it requires heavier discussion. But I don't see the point in just saying up front we're going to look at every policy twice. On the other hand, it would be nice just to see, not in when I say consent calendar, I don't mean that we'd actually vote on it, but it would be nice to just see the policy again, even if we weren't going to take any action on the final policy, just in as an attachment in our packet. And then, I forgot the other thing I was going to say. Never mind. I remember. Thanks.
Anything else? We're out of time, so I don't know why I asked. I'm sorry. Does anyone want to extend time?
I just wanted to second what Tamara and Juan Carlos said about seeing the policies once they're final.
And the other thing I was remembering.
We're out of time. I can't cut off there and not cut off you.
Okay.
I still.
I'll just hold it.
Okay. No.
Question?
Huh?
Call the question.
There's no motion.
Okay, so we're moving on without doing anything really. So these will not come up the next work session because There's no,
So what's gonna happen to them?
Wait, yeah.
There are things that need to come up next work session.
We've asked for
Which is
follow-up
September.
information on one of them.
okay, people.
Okay.
Stop freaking out.
All right,
They're gonna come on next time.
okay.
I won't be here, so I can't prevent it. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, minutes approval. Anyone go through the minutes and find anything wrong? Juan Carlos, and then Joe.
On page 3 of the minutes, where it says votes, it should reflect the Commissioner Valle voting nay instead of councilor.
Oh, sorry. Is that page, what page?
Page 3 on the minutes, or my printout.
Oh, okay.
You capture that?
Commissioner. Yeah.
Okay.
And down below, under, it says agenda review, then the next one is minutes review. Following, just below in the May 9 minutes, change Mr. Clark to Mr. Clark was right. The next sentence, it was things that I was suggesting to do, and I think then just need to be clarification. Maybe Valle attached to that. That's it.
I was all for giving you that particular.
Look at the last minute, that's what I said.
Oh, okay.
I'm saying they don't.
Okay, Jim.
Don't blame that.
I'm not sure how you want to look at page 1 on the minutes, the actual minutes. Mike has another E on the end of his last name.
Sorry, I'll fix that.
Under the voting, you know where it is?
I think that's the English version.
It is the English version.
I'm sorry, but just go with it. I'm mostly Norwegian, so that's not working for me.
So it should be Clarkey?
Something like that.
And on the last page, where it has Ms. Lang, actually, it's the second line where it says, Mr. Rhodey offered to wrote a letter, probably should maybe be write a letter.
Okay.
You see that, Carter? Yeah, okay. That's all I saw.
Any other changes?
Thanks, Carter.
Approve the minutes with the
Appreciate that
corrections.
very much.
Second.
Looking at you.
Any opposition to that? Okay, they're approved.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the anonymous EPD survey. Starters that, no, Tamara, that's you.
So included in your packet today, since I'm the vice chair of the now defunct outreach committee, and Joe's not here, I'm speaking up on the subject. Included in your packet were round 2 of the responses to our police department employee survey, parsed in a different manner, to be able to glean the information in a way that you may want to see it. Thank you, Carter, for doing that and dividing it up different ways for us so we could have what we wanted. That's all I have to say about the policy. So if people have comments, questions, or other things, I'm going to turn the time back over to Caitlin to run a queue.
Okay. Juan Carlos, Bob Claire.
Thank you for keeping it anonymous. I think that was very, very important for at least the officers that I was talking to. It became clear that that would be a way that they would participate. Reading the survey and some of the responses, I clearly saw recurring themes such as officers or non-officers, whomever the respondents were, saying that they really wanted the members of the police commission to know more about police operations. And that is important to keep in mind. When I first started in the police commission, we had the special police academy, and I think I haven't seen one since, and I've been on the commission for 5 years. I encourage those powers to be to maybe put together another one, because that I've learned a lot, and I would like to learn more about us as we go. But as far as some of the comments that I saw repeated several times, I think the balance on people that have law enforcement background and none, I think is good for the police commission. But what I read is a lot of calling for those with law enforcement background, but I did appreciate that. They also were asking for more reflection on the community, on the police commission. Clearly we're talking about resources and jail space. And that was a recurring theme that I know was still in many officers' minds. So I think this is when the police commission can, in fact, go out there and advocate for resources. I want to see more training, more field training. So I really appreciated that they took the time to give us this kind of feedback. And I myself will now find ways to go out there and do more ride-alongs. That's important.
Bob?
Not for nothing and not to be critical of anything. I'm just asking, how many sworn personnel are on the department?
191.
So what I'm counting here, I didn't see any empirical data, but I'm thinking it's about 39 responses here.
That's 41.
41.
41? Okay, missed that.
It's at the end.
Okay, so some people didn't say how long they'd work here, but it looked like there was a good diversity of people, all the way from Randy Ellis, who made himself known by his famous statement, down to people with less than a few years. So we got a good cross-section, even though I wish more people had availed themselves. But I understand why they didn't, and that has to be considered also when we deal with this. That's all I'm trying to point out, is that we have a cross-section of the people who turned the survey in. But we have to ask ourselves the same questions I brought up at the meetings as to why more people in the community are not concerned enough to bring their concerns to council like we heard tonight, to committee and commission like we heard tonight. I have to ask the same question of the police, and why aren't more concerned about giving us the input that they should be able to give us to get us to do our mission. I don't know how to put this any better, but everybody cares about one thing that's very important to them, and then lots of other little things that are important to them, and they classify them according to what's going on. When I read the paper in the morning, I'm not too worried about what's happening down in Coos Bay or Coquille. I mean, that doesn't affect me. So how much am I going to get involved with worrying about that? And the same thing, I think, applies to our community and our police officers. Maybe we're not reaching out enough, or maybe we're not making the topics important enough, or maybe they just don't think they are important enough. So that's all I ask you to consider when you look at things like this. Thank you.
Clearer than myself.
So I had a question. Tamara, you mentioned round 2.
No, I didn't.
You said this was round 2 of the
Oh,
questionnaire?
yeah, we had some of this data in our last month's packet, didn't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I seen it on the outreach committee, so I wasn't sure about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have comments specifically about what the responses in the survey were, but I was very impressed at the time people took to respond to the survey. I think it really is, it speaks highly of their wanting to share their perspective, and that this was a valid way to ask for their perspective and input. So I think I was really pleased with the amount of time and the number of people who took the time to respond and share their views. I think it's really great. So that's my only comment right now.
I have myself, Tamara, and then James. I guess my suggestion would be is that, and I'm just gonna move so we can talk about it. I move to make a police ride-along mandatory as part of joining the police commission.
I'll second.
Awesome. For purpose of discussion. So here's my thoughts here. That was the biggest complaint, and it does seem a little odd that we would never have an official interaction with a police officer on their day-to-day job when we're talking about policies that affect their day-to-day job. And we got called out so many times in the survey about that. So I think one ride-along does not really kill your whole life, and it would give you a basis to which you can work from. So that's my suggestion. Really, there is 0 qualifications for serving on this body.
Wait
0.
a minute.
0 residency. Besides living in Eugene. And so what I think is, if you don't have to have any qualifications, the least you can do is say that you're committed to working. And if you can go on a ride-along and figure this stuff out and show, yeah, I'm willing to sit with a police officer and know his job, that's the one thing you got to do besides show up to these meetings, I don't see why that's a problem. But I'm willing to hear your input about it.
Are you continuing the queue?
Yeah, I'm continuing the queue. That's what I gotta say, people.
You got a big.
I'm gonna go out with a bang.
Apparently.
Not a big one, though.
I know. Tamara, James, and Mike, and Juan Carlos.
And Claire and Bob.
Yep, everyone.
Let's go around the room.
Okay, let's just go around the table.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your motion, Caitlin. I think it is important, especially since that's the feedback we got. There is a background check required in order to do a ride-along, and I know that at least one police commissioner in particular that's not here today took issue with that, and that's the reason he hasn't gone on a ride-along. So I'm not sure about the part about making it mandatory, but you know, maybe we could just use strong language instead.
James?
Yeah, well, thank you first. After going through this, I really kind of focus on this question 6 and stuff where all the feedback is coming in, and I see a lot of diverse positions and stuff. The ride-along, of course, does come up. There was one that I saw that to attend, I think, squad briefings. I mean, I have no problem with that if that's applicable or if it's possible. I have no idea. We don't know what the police commission can and cannot do. So that is something that we need to clarify, because everything, some of the things that they have in here that they're requesting, it's beyond what the police commission can do. Yeah. So, and perhaps they need to understand that. But those simple things like providing the minutes and stuff like that, you know, I mean, they're available. They're public records, and perhaps we may need to just go a step further and then supply them, you know, at their briefing rooms and those that want to pay attention to it. I don't know how many have already taken a ride along.
Never.
Okay, so the majority of us have already been on the ride-alongs and stuff, and chances are we'll go again. So perhaps they're not getting that feedback that we do go on ride-alongs. So we need to communicate a little bit better, I think.
Then y'all should have no problem making it required. Mike?
I have never been on a ride-along and been on this commission for a couple of years and council for 7. I've never been on a ride-along. I did go through the Police Citizens Academy 101 thing, passed with flying colors too. It was a lot of fun. I absolutely, if that is offered and done again, suggest that it should be done by all that want to serve, because of the invaluable experience of seeing the officers' day-to-day experiences, at least as closely as you can make them in those circumstances. I think it's probably a good idea to do that, but I would take great issue with what you said, Caitlin, about the qualifications of the members. Everybody in this room is qualified to be on the police commission by virtue of the fact that the point is to advise the chief and to advise the council from an intelligent, informed community member's point of view. And everybody in here was chosen by counselors and voted on by counselors because of their capacity to impart that point of view. So everybody in here is extremely well qualified to do this. Sorry, I don't mean to take issue with you, but I do. But it's not about how expert you are. And I respect the officers' opinions of the police commission, but that's not really the point from my perspective. The point of the commission is to make sure the chief has good citizen input on the policies he's in charge of saying are good and bad, and that the council gets good citizen input on our decisions. And I think the commission does a decent job with that.
Sometimes more decent than others.
That's absolutely true. And we can always learn more. And I think those are, that I'd probably vote in favor. They got a big goal on ride along, sure. To know what we're talking about.
To clarify, because apparently I called you all stupid without me.
I didn't hear that. I didn't hear that.
Which
I knew.
You're out of the
y'all,
queue.
I don't think you're stupid, not one of you.
You're out
Sorry,
of
just
the
to
queue.
clarify, I meant there isn't like you have to have 2 years of this. There's no required qualifications to apply. That's all I meant. And I think just having to do one thing to serve, that's all I meant. Claire, Bob, Tamara.
Well, Councilor Clark covered some of what I wanted to say. Also, so this is a volunteer position, and I would object to requiring a volunteer to do X, Y, and Z in order to be a volunteer for the city. There's an interview process, there's an application, an interview process, a commitment to attend the meetings. If you end up not coming to your meetings, you might be asked to be replaced, to have the council replace you. So I feel like there's a commitment from folks already to do this work. Plus, we have liaisons from 2 other bodies, and are we gonna require them that if they wanna be a liaison from the Human Rights Commission, they have to do a police ride-along? We may have folks who come who can't pass the background check and can't do the ride-along. So that needs to be considered. And what Councilor Clark said, I agree. I think this body is not here to be experts on police practices or how they do their job. We're here to offer our perspective on how their policies affect us as community members. And so I will not be supporting this and hope it does not pass.
Bob, Tamara?
Well, I think it's an excellent idea. I'll be making an amendment to the motion at the end of my talk, but I just wanted to say, I went at the behest of our then chairman, Juan Carlos, in August when we were on break. He suggested that everyone go right along. And I told the officer who I got stuck with, that's why I'm here. So, well, I'm not here to be a pest. I'm just here to observe and find out what's going on and how you guys handle things on the streets. And it was still enlightening and still different in every department how people do things. And I think, in deference to what Councilwoman Surratt is saying, I do think that it's very helpful to understand the police perspective, because we talk about building bridges, and I heard someone say you can't build that bridge, but somebody has to help to get that bridge built, and you can't build a bridge to somewhere without having the other people on the other side saying, yeah, it's okay. If you don't believe that, talk about the one going to Washington. They don't want it apparently, and we do. So, you know, it's got to be done. You have to get everybody's cooperation. You have to understand both sides' perspective. So I'm going to amend the motion to say that we strongly encourage commissioners to go on at least one ride-along.
Someone's got to second that.
I'll second that.
He's amending the motion.
Yeah.
It's just you have to accept it, and so does.
Oh, no.
Oh, is it friendly?
No, it wasn't, so he just needs to.
Sorry, I thought it was
Caitlin's not
friendly.
looking very
It felt friendly to me, sorry.
No, sorry, I felt like it was a substantial change, so it should be voted on. Okay,
What was the motion?
what? To change it from required
Strongly
to
encouraged.
strongly encouraged. Okay, so, discussion on the amendment. I'm gonna start a new speakers list so we can go back to it. Juan Carlos.
I believe that the strong encouragement works better. As Bob mentioned, I did encourage and challenge, actually use challenge. I
Yeah.
challenge commissioners to go out there and do ride-alongs. And I think it was a pretty good response. I think that mandating it to commissioners is going to present a lot of challenges. It's going to keep this group inaccessible because of many reasons. Even if somebody doesn't have a reason to be fear of having their background checked, it's not that. It's just the privacy and all that stuff. So I will hesitate for the commission to actually recommend that. I will support the amended motion to strongly recommend, and that'll be up to the individual commissioners.
Okay, I have myself and then James. So to clarify, I realize that in my life, delivery is not a strong point of mine at all times. Sometimes a little more flippant than I should be, but really I get discussion going, so I don't always apologize for it. My sincere main purpose of doing this is I just feel like it is very difficult to have conversations when you haven't walked both sides of the fence. And I think we're often called out about that, even from people across the table in our community, for saying you don't know our perspective from being a person of color, or you don't understand our perspective from this. And so I think anytime that you can hop that fence, it's important, and you can have better discussions. And I think if you're constantly talking about one topic and you're serving in this one capacity, to not do it seems actually just wrong to me. And I think the unfortunate part is we're all really busy, and so strongly encouraging, it's so easy to push that off. But if you just had one requirement to do during the year besides come to these meetings, I just don't see that as a huge sacrifice. I do see the legitimacy of saying that not everyone could go, though. And I do want to hear input from those maybe who have broken the law in their life. So I will support the strongly recommend, though I don't think it'll be effective. So I just have to say that. Jesse and Tamara.
No.
Oh, James, Jesse, Tamara, sorry.
Okay, well, two things. All of the commissioners have already had a background check.
No,
No?
no. They're not required.
Oh, okay, so why did I do a background check then?
For a ride-along.
For a ride-along.
No, I mean, to be on a commission, I had to do one.
You had to fill out an application.
Yeah, and it was
They didn't
about,
do
so in case they run a background check, no?
No.
It's for council.
Oh, well, so I was misinformed. Well, here, my next point, that I'm ready to go on another ride-along. I think a few months back there, I made a recommendation that, that the ride-alongs have a ballistic vest that says observer on there. So when the chief, he took that in good, spirit and stuff, so I figured that once he had those available, I'm going to be the first one to jump up. So just throwing it out there. It's just conversation.
Jesse and Tamara.
I think it's implicit in all of this that it's strongly encouraged that we do ride-alongs, from Juan Carlos challenging us to a lot of the discussions that we have. I do not think that we should pass this. It's just there anyway, and that's not the right answer to what this survey is. There's a lot of discussion we can have about this survey, and I think that we are wasting time talking about whether we should mandate a ride-along.
Okay. Well, Tamara.
So I'm going to support the motion because it's just a recommendation and encouragement. Carter, will you, since we don't have a meeting in August, correct, next month? Correct. Would you send out information on one of your Friday updates about how to access that ride-along process again? Because I think it's changed since I last rode along, and I don't know what it is anymore. Other folks might be in the same boat. Thank you very much.
Okay, so now we're yeah, all those in favor of changing from required to,
What?
I'd raise my hand a
I'm
couple
sorry,
times.
I'm so ADD tonight. Jim.
I do like the encouraged language, but I would also like to add, if I can, more than just the ride-along, but perhaps the Citizens Police Academy also to that. As long as it's still going, is it still going, Chief? Okay. Because I think that's even more valuable than a ride-along, in my opinion. I don't know about you, Mike, but I would say that is. Having done both, it's extremely valuable. But I also disagree with needing to have those kind of skills to have, of having that requirement, because most citizens don't have that skill set. And if the city council really wants the value from citizens who, and for the most part, don't have that skill set of having been on a ride-along or going to the Citizens Police Academy, that's what most of the citizens in the city are. And if citizens are trying to understand what the police are going through, I think that's valuable input from people who don't have that skill set, because that's what most people are looking at, is how the police act is not coming from understanding of the police, they're coming from their own viewpoints of not having seen that. So I think that's valuable input for the chief and for the city to have that viewpoint also. So that's why one of the other reasons I don't like having it be required.
All those in favor of changing from required to strongly recommend, please raise your hand. Okay, it's good. So now is anyone opposed to putting this in the commission packet? Okay, all those in favor of, I was just seeing if I could do it by unanimous consent. All those in favor of including this in the police commission packet, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, great. Okay, Tamara, back to you.
Or am I doing one of the agenda items?
Yeah.
Oh,
no,
sorry.
you said you had something to say.
I'm done.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask to have in state of public safety talked about by someone during commission comments that was there. That's all.
Okay. So second, is there anything else that some people would like to do with this survey?
Point of order.
Yes.
Did we vote just now on both the motion to substitute and then the amended motion, or just one?
Just one. Just one.
We have a need to vote on both the substitution and then again on the main motion for it to be official.
Substitution.
There was
Yes.
an amendment.
Because it was an amendment, and then it was.
We amended
We
the
voted
original
on both.
motion.
We
We
had
voted
two
to do
votes.
so. Did
We
we
had
take
two
the
votes.
second?
We had two votes.
Yeah.
The first one was unanimous.
It's two
Oh,
votes.
so
No, it
when you
wasn't.
said to add it to the
I voted against
commission
the first
packet,
one.
that's what you meant.
Right.
We should change it from mandatory to.
Yeah.
We voted on the
Second.
amendment and then we voted on including it. We voted twice.
Right.
So your motion
Okay.
was different than the amended, that's what was kind of confused.
The amendment overtook mine.
Right.
And then we voted on the motion.
Thank you for the clarity. Appreciate it. I think we're covered.
Right.
It was a good point.
Y'all caught up, Carter?
No, I'll
You wanna wait?
watch the video.
I watched her nod her head. I think we agreed.
Agreed
Not to
on
cause
what?
trouble here, I'm just saying.
Okay.
All right.
Whose music she was listening.
All right. No, so this is it with the survey. I just wanted to clarify that no one had any action steps they wanted to put on the table with this. James?
I think that we probably want to take some time and go through the survey as a commission, because there's a lot of information. I think that Jesse brought that up. There's a lot of information in here that we should actually consider. We put a lot of time in developing this, and just to say, to get it back and say, okay, well, that's the end of that, that would be a total waste of time, a lot of effort, because we were interested in those particular questions, and we need to take some time to go through those and filter those.
This is a question. Has this been on the agenda twice?
No.
Once?
Yes.
Just today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's just included last name in the packet.
So we
Okay.
can put it on the agenda next month if somebody knows what they want to do with it on the agenda in September.
Can I, point of information, are we gonna limit every topic to being on the agenda once or twice? I thought that was just applied to policy considerations.
No, it's just if you didn't have anything else you wanted to do with it, it wasn't gonna come up again.
Okay. Well, I think James might be suggesting.
Putting it on.
I'll get in the queue for talking about with James.
No, yeah, now that someone asked, we're gonna put it on again. I mean, well, whoever's chair is gonna do it. James, are you done?
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay. Bob?
Yeah, James brought up a question about attending briefings. Perhaps that's something that commissioners would like to do, to find out what's going on in the community, how the police are informed before they begin their shift. I don't know what the policy is, and I think it's valid to ask what the policy is. So in consideration of that, I'd like, to give any commissioner a chance to ask the chief any of the responses that were made in the survey, if they have questions about them, to bring those up and encourage an answer about how things that you might like to see done, how that policy, what the policy is of the police department to handle those. So I'd move to place this on the table, lay it on the table till the September meeting, where it will be taken off the table and discussed.
Second.
Yeah, we'll do that. It's good. Claire?
So I think that's a great idea. I was just thinking process-wise, or if there's a way to make the next conversation more efficient, is maybe commissioners, I don't know if this would be helpful or cause more problems, but if commissioners might maybe write up a very brief, like, I want to call out this piece for further discussion, and share that with Carter before the September meeting, so it could shape the conversation. So we have a starting point for things, and not just be fishing through the whole survey, pulling stuff out. Then things could be grouped where we four commissioners all identified as similar topic area. That's just a recommendation on shaping the work, but it would require some pre-reading and submitting to Carter from us.
Yeah, that would require that. Mike?
I'm not disagreeing with you about the validity of doing so. I'm just, for clarity's sake, what's the value to our mission of doing that work? Because I just want to understand more clearly. I mean, I get that it's interesting information, the officers' opinions on the work of the commission. But I'm not sure what the value is to our mission.
Okay, I have, was there, I think that was the last person in the queue. I have myself, then James in the queue.
Can
I thought I was in the queue also.
Can I ask the maker of the
She doesn't have
motion
you
that
written down.
particular question?
Sure.
Point of order, we can vote this down
Yeah.
now, forget about it. I mean, but under Roberts, we have to vote on a motion to table.
Motion to table, that's
Can't
what
have any
I-
discussion, yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, he's right.
So we
Right.
should do that,
Okay.
and then we can.
Motion to
we
table
vote it
till
down, we
September
can-
is on the table.
Oh, I didn't realize that was what your motion was.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
there was a
sorry.
motion and a
That was my
second,
confusion.
table, and then discussion
I thought the
continued,
two
so.
councilmen would,
Um,
between them.
I misunderstood what your wording.
Yeah,
Okay.
so all those in favor of tabling into this discussion till the September meeting, we're out of time, well out of time anyway, please indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please raise your hand or say nay. Okay, motion carries, so that topic is over. The next topic on our agenda is update on selection process of new commissioner. Is that you, Carter? And are we electing a new chair as well? Don't see that on the agenda.
So, the bylaws say that in the absence of the chair, the vice chair serves as chair. So after Caitlin leaves, Tamara will serve as chair unless you vote a new chair. In terms of identifying a new commissioner, the bylaws also say that the process has to be the same as the normal process. There were no police commission openings in the spring, so we didn't solicit applications in the spring. So anybody who was only interested in being on the police commission might not have submitted an application because they might have only waited for an opening on the police commission. Therefore, we've gone back out and are soliciting applications in the general public. It's on our website, it's on the city boards and commissions website. Applications are due the 26th of July, and the process is called out in the ordinance. The applications they go to the city manager's office, the mayor reviews them, she makes a recommendation to the council who confirms. The police commission can and has been invited to weigh in and offer their input to the mayor, and it is not spelled out in the ordinance as a requirement or a prerequisite. With break coming, it's likely that this isn't going to get on the council calendar until September. Or October, correct. And I have not heard back from the mayor to find out what her timing is, but we've got the deadline for when the applications are due in July, which gives plenty of time to get something in place for hopefully an October, if not October, November replacement. So that is what I know.
Okay, I move that we open elections for chair.
Second.
What? I don't have, that's fine.
That's okay, we can tear up.
Okay,
I have a nomination.
okay, go for it.
I nominate Bob.
A second.
Okay, so let's clarify, you don't have to second. Please don't, it gets weird if someone doesn't. So just throw out nominations and then we'll do the ballot. That'll be the process.
We're nominating for chair at this moment?
Yeah,
Is that
chair.
right?
To replace Caitlin.
Yeah.
I'd like to nominate Bob Walker.
I already nominated.
Yeah, he's always been nominated, yeah.
I'm way back here in the corner.
I'm a little hard of hearing over here
George
too.
was sleeping. No.
Okay, any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Jesse Lorkey.
I decline, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further nominations, Bob's our chair.
I'd like us to
Congratulations.
vote.
No, you don't have any other options.
Congratulations, and you were here too.
I know, thank you. If I survive August, I'll be back in September.
I'm thinking since you didn't decline the.
Congratulations, Robert.
Thank you very much, and everyone who tried to nominate me, thank you. I would like to say, under personal privilege, if I might, Madam Chair,
Oh.
that what I would like to say is when I found out something about myself after coming on the commission, and that was, I do have certain biases that I wasn't aware of. And one of them is how I thought a college student might serve on a commission. And judging by my granddaughters who are college, one college student and others college age, I had the entirely wrong idea about our current chairman. And I have told her this in private. I'm going to embarrass you in public now, but I'm amazed at how well she has conducted herself through before she was chairman, and certainly as chair. The decorum and the ability to conduct the meetings and handle them in the fashion she's done has been exemplary, and I want to personally thank you for letting us get through the session.
And we have a plaque to present to Caitlin.
Sweet.
For her service on the commission.
Oh,
There you go.
Thanks.
So everyone can see.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, everyone.
And here's the hardware that goes with it. Thank
Gotta
you.
have hardware.
Oh, and cake, and there's cake.
Yeah, okay, great.
Great.
Yeah, break time. Thank you.
So, hope everything's okay. I saw you on the phone. That's usually the sign of a problem, isn't it?
Very anticipated, something not being
Oh,
No, things you're worried about.
Right. Well, I know.
Because Little League, we agreed that we were going to, as, you know, in our work plan, identify certain times take up. So, do you have, the last meeting, I suggested it be like icon. And so this is for us to talk about how do we want to talk about. That's my interpretation. Correct. But it is on the agenda, so it's not, we'll talk about it. What's the shape of how we'll get the information?
She had to take that one more step and say, yeah, but I don't.
I think I wrote on mine.
And she,
Has what?
They had the, well, at least for the applicant.
That's
That is more.
What you
I
guys?
wrote notes, I wrote notes from these, is that okay? You can have mine.
I'm sure it's online, what it was showing up on the screen. How was it online?
Okay, so you go under City of Eugene, when you get to their main page, go to department.
Where was that?
Police.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Police commission.
Oh,
And it'll be like, it's on one corner.
Yeah, I have met Lily, but just at one meeting when I was working, so you know.
And then you can get everything else.
That's all I.
So they came.
We contacted them for just.
Sometimes it just surface, you know, if you gotta practice.
It was actually more. It might have been.
Okay, so everything is in there, if we're down to the.
Life is good, lots of good things are happening right now. We're very happy.
How are you?
Good. What time?
Thank you.
Hey, I got a couple of.
All right. Thank you, super, nice to meet you.
No, hey, what he said. What he said. That's hard to do. Because I'm an ornery cuss, it's hard for people who are younger to look up at me and go, hey, listen, here, I'm an ornery cuss. What's that?
So keep her up.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Mike wants to get you. He's raising his hands. Let him go.
No, it's all right. I don't mind being poked. I actually try to respect everyone, so I take it. Yeah, I take it. I'm big. Oh, sweet! I saw those on Facebook.
No, yeah, you didn't see these on Facebook.
I'm glad there's no pictures of college, pictures of me from college, as far as I know.
Yeah.
Because these guys are holding on. Although there are plenty of them that should have been. You know what's funny, Chief? I'm going to admit now, because the statute of limitations will probably be okay, that I once lied very badly to a police officer in college. And I think it was you. I'm not even sure, but I mean, I can remember what the guy looked like, and I've always thought it was probably you. What's that? 1980. I want to say that was either 86 or 87 in my fraternity, and we were having a party that was way too loud, and he come to the door and he said, hey, you've had neighbors all over the place complain, are you responsible? I said, yes, sir, and he asked me my name. I gave him my alias. Yeah, I did.
What's the statute of limitations?
Yeah, that's That's what I was saying, I think I'm cool, I think I'm clear on that. I really did.
and say, oh yeah, I remember.
I think I'm clear on that. Yeah, I gave him my alias, which I won't say out loud because he's wanted for a lot of things, but I'm not. That is funny.
Oh, I commend your department, because
If
this
all the
morning
adults have had some and some left over, you may, the answer is yes. But be cool and wait till the adults had theirs, okay?
Like 3 days to get back to you. No, I think it was preemptive. Because my back window, there's our yard, and then there's an alley. Maybe there's shooting.
A long time ago, I was Bethel, right? And
You mean in the paper? If you read the paper, I get a lot more ink than anybody else that went outside and looked at it. I get cast the outside into the first calls on TV.
Firecracker boys.
I usually do,
they're scared to death.
I'm not getting any, I'm not experiencing any loss of blood.
So,
Well, I have to. Well, I've never
neighbors' houses on
I
the
never
side,
arrested
this
this
is the
time.
only thing that told me. And mom and dad looked at each
Yes,
other
dear,
and
but that
said-
one's a little big, that one's right.
So they bring Junior out
Actually,
and he's
the
like,
judge I used to work for,
As long as there's friends, yes, you may.
3, and they went for 4.
Wow. Yeah, same sort of
killed
thing.
him, but
Yeah.
he admitted
Through the name.
he was shooting blackbirds on their tires.
Yeah, when they were in summer, Jeff?
We went down to Southeast Oregon a couple of weeks ago and spent 9 days there. Down in the Steam Mountain area. It was nice.
Is it a boy or girl? Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I think maybe they're
Yeah,
trying to
hike camp,
shoot cats,
around there.
which is terrible, but yeah, I don't think it was the person just well, exactly. Yeah, that's what I was.
There you go.
My husband said, maybe something's bad about the Mother's Day. And I said, no, it's because I've been complaining about fireworks in public.
Enlisting for coyotes, it's like he went this way across the road.
But I think I saw, I spotted down in my window. I got a double shade window. But the other crack was bigger.
Even medical marijuana. The guy held him at gunpoint until he could harvest his crop and then he let him go. Because he's afraid to put out a dark on it. Wow.
Hey, give me the money.
Took it all down, literally like, oh well, you know, I got to do this. Yeah, it's funny as hell.
Yeah, you know, they continue to like, hey, we want this for letting me send you off to get paid. You know, the way their numbers work out.
Kids got lost up there, they found his car.
You doing okay?
Oh gosh, we're gonna get this.
Somewhere.
Oh, right,
So that when that was no, it was in the winter time, February.
You know,
But we knew we were going.
It's a lot that we
We
can,
planned
we'll get whatever. As soon as we can start bringing
So
them.
there's one store, there's one
And by the way, we'll fill it with people who.
the store like from the time we did Eastern Oregon all the way
Yeah, I
up
also
to
don't know.
Sandra at the field store.
I mean, I
So
understand.
I was in there talking with the guy.
So what job will you be doing in
This
Portland?
kid that got lost a while back, and he said, well, a friend of mine was out camping.
Basically, I'm working on responding to posts.
He woke
So
up,
I'm
he
proposing
heard voices in the night.
So when
woke
the
up in
city
morning.
or county needs a road or water tank or whatever infrastructure built, they'll go and request for proposals and I write
And when it
it.
tells me that
Women,
it is funny, like,
me and Nelson.
probably everything that comes up in the city or anything weird
Good, I
that
should send
happens
you,
is gonna be
when I have to do my request for proposal next year for
Here's
our
what I
processes, I should give you a call maybe.
And one of the things she pointed out, she goes, well, you know, we're in this big tower, they're not gonna be wandering around in yards, you know, some beer cans.
So,
I
I probably while we were gone.
Designed.
Yeah, so she decided to go on an age request, a vision request. She only had a night. She was naked.
Yeah, when it still,
I guess she got in there, but
condition that
I mean, not really.
Wanted to live out in there.
I was always a gymnastic coach.
But for me, this is a big part of the equation.
Yes.
Smoking peyote, getting up their vision. So
No, I agree.
and you're working out.
You know, but they're always closed and then they come home when they're. It's like.
You gotta be meticulous about the calorie count. You just do it once.
I love the. My wife doesn't travel. When we first got here, we went everywhere. We went over
As long as
Eastern
that
Oregon,
meeting got one.
the Mesas, all down there. We went to Canyon Reservation, we stayed in a hotel on the.
No, yes.
Randy Groves did
Came up the coast down to Fort Bay.
He's told her.
Very, no, I was.
I'm ready.
Anyway, he went out and he had
She keeps telling me, going to go.
commander on that fire scene.
Seem to get this, dude.
I know.
What part of this is not Glad we got married.
He gets out,
Push it, this is really, it's a thing.
and he says,
And I understand.
somebody watched the firework.
I reach a point in their life where they don't go.
And I said,
Here comes.
Grew up in
That's terrible.
and all three quarters.
So how did you get
Well, it was
cupcake?
amazing to me that I showed up.
What, Jim?
How did you get cupcake?
So that's where you develop.
Oh, so they had a party, a tea party down here at football. And they had cupcakes there from Costco.
Like, yeah, I left town.
Those big ones. And one of his
That's
good
when
ones,
Councilor Pauling said, man, I went by the corner of
$100
Bogart tennis shoe, Gillespie, and this guy was
that one, he wore them like that was the second day he wore them.
No, I mean,
And
that
Jake
was
was talking to him, and he brought his frosting side down right on the, well, one shoe. And it never came out.
put up with it, or they go over and join.
That's how he got his cupcake.
There's a
Never
guy.
got cupcake, cupcake. So he's not that
Cresswell, instead of Cresswell, it seems like everyone's trying to.
Oh, it's a thing.
Formal fireworks displays, they're all illegal fireworks and send them off.
He likes it. Gives us something. Yeah, everybody in that.
did it. Taught my son.
In fact,
It's not usually a name you want to.
Usually what he likes, usually when someone went up to the lake, you know, and vacation, and my niece who has hair, she was like cutting people's hair, she brought all
It's a good part.
she shaved
And,
the
I'm
cupcake
sure
at
there's
the size of his head.
Yeah, I mean, we'd share.
We got
Most of the kids, they learn.
Well,
Possibility.
we were in Sun River, and there's
Likes attention.
a lot of people were using it.
really?
It wasn't his brother-in-law.
so Jason is playing on the,
Involved.
Because that's what
He thought that all the clock
Yeah.
Oh, is he?
yeah, they were
He did that before.
But yeah, but initially they were really letting boys do it, but then they didn't have
What they do, yeah, and then you start off with a zillion and then you end up
But yesterday, Jason played with I think he said Alan played and Nero, and Nero said, so Nero was there, and then Jason said, he was asking about, you know,
During World War Z, it's like,
And
just don't know anybody
I
else.
read almost all, I got about 100 pages. And I'm gonna tell you, the way they present it, it's really cool, because they get all the different.
And I don't know him, I was admire, I was like,
So they went,
no, I've seen only one.
yeah, I think he quite gets ways outside of that.
So Christine was asking about, Jim might be there, he might go there and speak to you.
In fact,
And what he says there.
it's a closed country anyway.
And we decided,
Yeah, just trying to.
All kinds of things are interesting anyway.
he said our car.
This is just what I need, a couple more calories, right here.
Ripped off paneling.
Yeah.
Gave sugar to the kids.
I did, I sugared them all.
First part was.
Kind of, somebody, so they're gonna be flying.
Oh, my guys are good.
Pedals and light, you guys are gonna steer.
Drive home, what for?
I'll be your engine, you can be the steer. You can steer where we go.
Just the mother isn't so great. Just the mother
Is that
isn't
what we
so great.
have to talk
Well, yeah, not at night through the mountains. But, so anyway, that's, you know, there's
She's quite, I've seen
create a split.
Have you seen it?
I've been using more than.
This morning.
I'm a very Although I have fun.
And it's about this little guy.
I know you're not sleeping.
I know what I meant.
What other little guy?
That one's in jail.
Some of the things, you bring in all of the stars and stuff, you know.
I love my kids.
He's like one of those guys like. I got it.
You're a smart man. That was just the next position.
But it seems like
I hope you don't have to have good contact with her, because.
I don't know her as far as I know.
Yeah, I'm just saying. I didn't like him. I'm really
Oh, yeah.
Because I'm everybody I know. I can't understand. I mean,
know that you have to get out of it. That last one they had the do something with it.
I can't, law is what it is, so all right, have a nice day. But it's still
That was, I never saw
I haven't been to see it. I won't.
Never saw it coming.
What I do for a living is I know there's gifts.
Is that the one that you get the incredible gifts?
I would never be the same. No, but she was walking around the chamber and said everybody she could think of. She's the person who's the child. She was walking around to all the bunch of people that she knows. Most of them were visually challenged about me, and they call me out this guy.
And he didn't do it. He backed out. He said he did, but he didn't do it.
So I called out. David was going,
one of his relatives.
she has access here because you're you. The only reason any of these people deal with it at all is they don't. Because you grant
Actually, the daughter did
I
actually.
said, I have political problems. It's only through what you're granting. So it's not your problem, brother. I want you to solve it and do it now.
So
Because, I said, I won't win a defamation suit against the chamber, but it sure looks fun and great to win.
Yeah. And
Well, she don't work there. You know what I'm saying now, brother?
That's so nice.
She puts on a she comes off really, I wouldn't say sweet, but she comes off professional, so I'm sure she can piss her off, don't be in that room. Make her feel proud.
She told me that Sean.
But A, you asked, B, I work on
That's what I.
C, I'm just pissed. I don't do it very much though. I usually shut up and go, smile, smile.
I don't see that. I tell you, I didn't see it. They didn't imagine that because I'm thinking that's what the confrontation goes on.
Something that Carol and I mentioned to her.
You all right?
Yeah, we don't want to lose him before he's.
Yeah. You got some meetings to run, brother.
That's right.
We start off good.
Yeah, I definitely know something we're trying to get to, but I don't know if she will though. She's more. Time we ran out, yeah.
I do feel like you some are out as far as the council goes. As far as the city council goes, seems like.
Okay, everyone, we're gonna come back
What were you
now.
What possessed?
I think that almost every day of my life. I go, really? Really? So many things I don't
There's some
understand.
good things. Then there's some others I was going to.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna pick back up with,
Association.
project scoping for the homelessness topic. Can't talk. Carter?
So at the last meeting, the commission decided to start with policies and practices impacting people experiencing homelessness and based on the conversation at the retreat and at subsequent meetings, I put my thinking cap on and put together this as a first place for you all to start having a conversation. I don't have any vesting in this as an answer. I think what would be extremely helpful would be for you to decide on the headers, which I've got covered, which are, what is your purpose? What is it you want to accomplish? And so I've listed 3 that might work or you might want to change. How it is you want to go about the work, and what is it you want to have at the end of the day? What is your desired outcome from that? And so I'll walk through what's included here, and I'm not sure how you want to go through it because I don't want this to feel like I don't, it's entirely your project. This is intended to just start the conversation. So the purpose that I listed would be to first understand the impact on people experiencing homelessness of policies that disproportionately affect that population, including, and then I listed some that I could think of on the Friday afternoon that I did. That is intended to be a comprehensive list of all the policies that the department has, so if there's something missing like illegal camping, it's an oversight, not an omission, an intentional omission. So it could be changed to say including but not limited to or something. Considering all of those policies put together and the resulting perception of criminalizing homelessness, and to make recommendations about changes to policy or practice to reduce any disproportionate impact or alternatives. I don't know if you want me to just run, if you want to stop there, or how you want to. Right.
Can we discuss this along the way, or what's the process?
Yeah, let's do that. There's no process.
Okay. If there's, am I the first in the queue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure, somebody tell me what to do. All right.
Yeah, you're good.
I have to say that I revile at this a little bit. First of all, I don't understand, and don't get me wrong, I appreciate very much, Carter, that you took a stab at what are we trying to do here. And I appreciate that. But there's an implicit assumption in that first point that that population is disproportionately affected. And I don't know if that's true or untrue by those particular ones. I also don't, I have an absolute hatred, is a really strong word, but that when people say out loud, criminalizing homelessness, the issue is about crimes. Crimes are committed, acts are things that are taken. When someone doesn't have an opportunity to be less accountable for having violated the law by virtue of their housing status, and the idea that because it's hard on somebody, somehow they should get a pass on laws that affect everyone, and or that they're somehow being disproportionately penalized, I find that offensive, I just have to say. So if we're going to focus on the effect of homelessness or how that population is affected by the way police enforce the law, I would want it to be an examination of the question, are they held to a different standard or not? And if so, how do you know? And if so, what's the effect of that? Thank you.
Jesse?
I think Mike nailed it right there with, are they held to a different standard or not? Might be the discussion that we have to have. I'm not sure that right now is the right time to have it. There's been a lot of discussion about this recently. On my docket, I've seen a marked decrease in the number of criminal trespass citations. The council's having a big discussion about camping right now. The wetlands is about to get closed down. There's going to be a lot of movement and action that happens. Judge Mary Morey has pulled together an excellent consortium of groups that are putting together a mental health consortium, not just as part of the mental health court, but she's pulled together Peace Health and Lane County Mental Health and all kinds of groups that deal with a lot of the population that we might end up talking about. And I'm not sure what the police commission can offer right now at this time. We might look at what else is going on to inform our discussion, but I kind of think that our discussion might be kicked down the calendar a ways, look at it again, let the dust settle and see where we're at. If I can just go on for a second more, I think,
You can.
in a word, I think the chief has heard a ton from us in the community about this, and we have no idea how that's going to affect what the police commission could do, like how homelessness and policing interact. We can give it some time at this point.
Okay. Claire?
So I appreciate Carter's efforts to draft something up for us to talk about. I think it's really helpful. Leaving aside the purpose piece for a minute, I think the process overview piece looks really solid. I think one of the challenges was, I think the interest here was to not talk about the homeless people, but to talk about the policy and how our officers have to carry out that policy. So I think if we were, I would recommend, and I don't have language to recommend right at the moment, but that the purpose be more around, what my interest is to hear from some officers, you know, how do they have to affect this policy, and how is that operational? What kind of challenges does that present? What kind of routine is it? Not so much the effect on the people who may be the subject of the policing. At this point, that was really my interest for this body. I wish my brain was working better. I might be able to offer some language, but maybe with that in mind, because the chief and I talked briefly after the last meeting about, I think since this body is grounded on looking at policy, if there were particular policies that tend to interact with people who are homeless more than others, then those would be policies that we might want to look at, like you know, public urination, criminal trespass, sleeping in the parks. So from my perspective, this body, I wasn't interested in us looking so much at the receiving end as how our officers have to deal with implementing these policies, and what does that mean, and are there ways that they could be, you know, we may find, well, these are the policies, this works for the community and we're not going to make any changes, or the commission might decide that perhaps we'd like to put them in the queue for review down the line. But part of it was motivated by the fact that there was so much going on. It seemed like this group, with that perspective of police officers who do not get to come to city council and tell us about the challenges that they have with dealing with the homeless population, this is a venue to hear that and carry that forward to the city council. So that was really what I had in mind as we were talking about putting this on the agenda for this body. At the same time, I think, you know, it's hard to know how timing's going to work out with all the other things that are going on. So I appreciate Jesse's idea that maybe later, but even if we followed this script, we wouldn't be really looking at anything concrete for possible action until November.
Note to self, Claire Schultz.
Thanks, Claire. So at this time, I just need to pause this discussion and fix the agenda because I let us go over time severely. So basically what needs to happen. Okay, so does the group need to talk about topics for the joint meeting, or can leadership do that with Carter alone? I'm trying to cut space here, or we're gonna have to stay open.
No, we'll do that.
Okay, so I'm gonna cut that. If you have ideas, email them. They'll be included. Okay, and so we got 10 minutes out of that.
I don't think commission comments can take 30 minutes.
Oh, yeah, well, okay.
Be briefer than that.
Yeah, Okay, we'll cut that, okay. Sorry, I figured that out now. I just had to make sure I could cut something. Okay, so Claire, you were saying you want to hear how officers enforce the policies?
Experience the requirement to enforce those policies.
So I guess I'm visualizing someone asking an officer that and then being like, well, there's a law and I enforce it.
Well, so when we got a tour of the homeless camps by Parks and Open Space staff, they were able to share, well, here's our protocol, we always go in pairs, we have this information to offer, here's some of the personal experiences I've had when I've had to implement this parks policy. And so they were able to provide context for how they interact with people in the parks when they're trying to do their jobs as parks and open space.
Okay.
So it's kind of that idea.
Okay.
You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on discussion so far, I heard two things that people want to somehow understand. Is there a disproportionate effect upon homeless people with certain laws? And then the second piece, getting more context about how officers carry out certain policies? No. Clarify.
I don't need to know the answer to the first. I was just simply trying to redirect the thing. But I think Claire nailed it entirely, and I'd much rather spend time doing what she said.
And I think Carter pulled out particular
Right.
we got to pick a few areas to look at.
Okay.
Those are areas that do tend to impact people who are homeless more. There are other policies that might impact car drivers more, and we don't need to look at those.
Right.
So I think that's just trying to parse out what policies might, be connected to this particular issue.
Okay, so would anyone like to add or delete items listed that Carter listed in number 1? They are public urination, defecation, criminal trespass, park violations, open container. I would encourage you not to add too many more, but if you'd like to switch some out, that'd be good.
Can I say something?
Someone can do a point of information anytime.
I didn't think this was relevant anymore based on the conversation.
Well,
I
or
think the
you
first
said
part-
narrowing scope to certain policies. Isn't that what you said?
But this is the perspective of the homeless person
Right,
as
but we're
opposed to
just
the
flipping the
officers.
perspective, but what else is listed there is relevant.
Yes.
We're flipping the perspective of what we're looking at.
Exactly.
We're not looking at from the homeless impact, we're looking at it from the police officer enforcement. That's the same
Thank you.
things, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so if we just change the language
Thank
to
you.
reflect that.
Then we're, okay. I just wanted to make sure I was understanding what people were saying. Okay,
Okay.
so we still have George, Juan Carlos, Tamara, James, and Bob. So George, you're up.
I do a little experiment. I'm privileged enough to do an experiment with the homeless. I own a piece of property on West 7th, the old lampshade shop, and I have incredible amounts of no trespassing signs around it. And I call minimum 2, sometimes 3 times a week. And I used to go up to them, and I had one guy actually hit my car with a stick because it wasn't my business for him to get off. Second time I asked him, so I just called the police. And I think there's been 13 or 14 incidences of the police coming, and only that man who was very violent at me, was there any citations issued. So, and I'm with Mike, they are getting privileges that if I went over to your house and started camping there, I would not be assessed the same privileges. And by the way, I let the officer, I don't know anything, and I let the officers handle it the way they should handle it, is my opinion, because I'm not there. And most of them, all except one, were very, 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 very pleasant, so, yeah. So, that's my 2 cents worth on that.
Juan Carlos and Tamara.
I just like to approach this as, understanding what Councilor Clark said in his opening remarks on this, on the perception of criminalizing homeless. And I understand that perspective, especially downtown where many of the people that I personally know are trying to start business and continue business. But I think what the police commission needs to do is to clearly identify those policies in which the police commission needs to review to reflect community values, and at the same time, what are the resources that we need to support the police officers out there in terms of policing alternatives. So yes, I will want to share and ask for the accountability piece, but equally I want to make sure that we are out there supporting officers with resources. I want to say, what are the tools that you need to be able to interact with the homeless population? I also don't think this is, I'm not in a big hurry. It has to be back to the policies that we're set to do. In my ideal world would be to be able to address housing and all these things that the police commission doesn't do, cannot do. But we can look at the specific policies and how it's affecting the ability for the officers to do the job, but also how it's affecting the people that have no homes. Maybe there's some things that we can make adjustments on. But in the end, it's about resources as well, too.
Also, just wanted to draw attention, in case anyone didn't notice, Joe typed an email to us all, so if you haven't read that, take a minute to do that. So I just want to be transparent, and at this time, I'm going to cut off the speakers list. So if you raise your hand at me, I don't have time to accommodate, and I apologize. So we are going to end with Tamara, James, and Bob. So Tamara.
I will give my time to Mike.
I think it would be really valuable from a counselor's perspective, because for whatever reason we won't or don't talk about it at the table, to hear from officers on how they define the differences of homeless people that they come in contact with regularly. One of the things we tend to do is talk about the homeless as an amorphous group, as opposed to folks who are temporarily experiencing economic emergencies and difficulty, people who are permanently travelers and lifestyle choice. I mean, there's different kind of classifications for people who are in that position. And the people on the street every day dealing with it have a real clear understanding of that, and I think it'd be useful to have them talk about that. And how they deal with those people differently.
Yeah, we months back, perhaps even years back, we used to have officers come and present from an officer perspective. We've not done that in a while. We're going the same direction that Mike and Clara went. If we can have officers actually come here and share their experience, and that's one thing that was identified in the survey that we did. So the officers can come in and impart their actual experience dealing with this homelessness, then that can kind of focus us on some of the policies that may be perhaps of interest to everybody, because it'll allow them the time to say, hey, here's something that we've been doing and that we've been experiencing, and perhaps we could use a little help on that. So I think it would serve a wider net of support for everybody concerned if we had the actual officers come in and share their experiences and stuff and find out what they think. That's it.
Bob?
Yeah, when I first read this, I got the same sort of reaction that Mike had, but not quite as strong. But I immediately questioned, okay, wait a minute, why is this disproportionately affecting only one segment of our population, Eugene? I'm hearing things about, minorities who are being affected by policies we're talking about. I can substitute a number of groups, different groups in that, instead of homeless, and want to know, and seriously want to know why the policies are disproportionately affecting them. Are they? Are they is the question. And yet, once you determine that, then what are we doing wrong here? So I don't have a sense that that is the case right now. I heard anecdotal information from one commissioner. Joe said he observed a homeless person walking across the street and getting stopped and contacted by EPD for jaywalking. He observed a man in a suit, although I haven't seen many of those in Eugene, walk across the street, and the police never contacted him. So he felt there was disproportionate treatment for homeless people. Now, I don't know. I don't have the data. I would love to know, but we don't keep figures on whether people are homeless for obvious reasons. We don't want to classify them as a homeless person and, oh, wow, you're treating me differently now because you said I'm a homeless person. And we just don't do that. We treat everybody the same. So my conclusion was, it doesn't matter who breaks the law. If you are breaking the law, you need to be either cited, talked to, let go on with a warning, whatever happens, happens. And until I see information that says that's not being done, that only homeless people are getting contacted for public urination, then I'm not willing to accept the premise. And I think we need, as Jesse suggested, to kick this down the road a little bit, think about what we really want out of this information. Where do we want to get it from, and how are we about to get it? Because that will inform us on what we're going to do about any policies and how they affect us. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks everyone for discussing that. So looking at the process overview, it looks like everyone's good with that. Hopefully there will be some police officers or a police officer in the panel. Again, imparting my thoughts moving forward so you all can think about it next time. Look, I just caution you to be careful that, again, we have limited resources here, so growing scope bigger each meeting, just be cognizant of that. And then just making sure that something's gonna come out of it, because we all worked really hard and thought about how we could make this a more efficient body, more effective, and I just want to make sure it doesn't turn back into the kind of show and tell environment we were creating before. So just being really mindful of what are we going to do with this, how are we moving forward, and having those conversations. I think it's important, like Claire brought up, to just pick a couple policies, talk about how those are being affected, not even the language of the policy, but how it's affecting the community would be great. I'm really excited for you all to try this new process, and I hope it works well for you all. Okay, so Chief's report. Sorry we're late. Which is good.
Yeah, you actually sound like a mature adult person mopping on. That's kind of cool.
We have some automatically generated graphs that we can pull up from our internal computer system, and this first slide, not this one, but the next slide, is one of those. Is there a controller? You're gonna have to do it. Okay, that's fine. And I can generate this data every hour, every minute of every day if I want to, and it'll update it to the minute. And the reason I wanted to share this with you is that our calls for service have gone up this year over last year by 16%. This is 12-13 year to date. Traffic stops are up 24%, person stops are up 19%, and so on. Total calls for service are up about 18%. The impressive thing is that the officer-generated activity, traffic stops, person stops, and other contacts are increasing even though our other workload has gone up. And that's the realities of knowing that certain efforts will are likely to result in certain outcomes. We're trying to reduce crime, and we do that by proactively interacting in the neighborhoods where crime is prevalent. So our officers are working hard. These are some things that happened over the last month. By the way, we had 17 retirements in the last fiscal year. And so it takes a lot of work to catch up from all that. And it's expensive because people will save their vacation time and other time and cash it out. So it took a lot of careful financial planning. I did some ride-alongs, spoke at in-service, met with employees one-on-one. We have a data-led policing steering committee I told you about. I don't want to read this list to you, I guess, but let me see. Some things I'll get into here in a minute are the recruitment that we're doing with the captain's process. We ran EPAL this year, which is always good. More retirements. The Forensic Evidence Unit received an accreditation presentation at the City Council meeting this last week. Yeah, I think that's enough of that. We had a shooting at the Parkway Inn. Hard to tell if the suspect or the victim was shot. Sometimes those things take a while to sort through. Pedestrian and vehicle safety program where we did some public education and before we did the enforcement. And that's always raises some good public conversation about who should get the citation when those things happen and where our enforcement should be focused, but it's good to raise awareness too about how to protect oneself. We had a burglary in progress where we captured the suspects following the burglary. Let's see. We made 2 drunk driving arrests, the same person the same day, and there was a jail visit in between there. We've had 2 deaths in West Eugene in the last 3 weeks. One was on Roosevelt. This last one was off of Liberty Street, where both men died after being involved in a fist fight. And this last one, the autopsy wasn't entirely helpful. We're waiting for the toxicology to come back on what was in the guy's blood, person who died, so that might reveal what caused the death. And you already heard about the Forensic Evidence Unit. And the mapping that you see here. Residential burglaries are going up this year, which is what you'd expect. Commercial burglaries came down a little bit. Stolen cars continue to go down, which is a trend we've seen for the last 3 or 4 years. And the car break-ins have gone down a little, but with a percentage number that small, that might have to do with delayed reporting we get caught up on, since we don't take reports on those instantaneously. It's always nice to see that maybe something like that is improving. And you see the concentrations. There you go. You see the concentrations in the same areas of town. Bethel, Danabo always has something around Barger and Royal with Beltline there. And then the West University neighborhood is always a good place to have a person's car broken into. We've seen a little increase in burglaries in southwest Eugene around Bailey Lane, on either side of Bailey Lane there. That's an increase that we've tried to address. And this next slide, you see what the city-wide patterns have been. Our crime analysis unit is concerned about the Bailey Hill area there. I think that's where our next hotspot might be. And then stolen recoveries. This is always an interesting slide for our officers to see where the cars are taken from and where they turn up later. It gives an indication of maybe where the neighborhood that the suspects are in. And that beat 5, which includes Bethel and parts of Whitaker, continues to be the place where most of those car thefts occur, or where the largest number of car thefts occur. Next slide is the year-to-date UUVs, stolen autos. And as I mentioned a minute ago, the beat 5, which is a huge beat, is where the larger part of those are happening. And crime analysis unit focus for this last week has been between 7th and 13th, Chambers to Monroe, and all days of the week, with some spikes on Thursday, with less on Sunday. And looks like they happen in the early morning hours, or not the early morning, but the mid-morning hours of 5A to 10A or so. So that's the time of day when we have officers that can focus on an area. And let's see, we have some 2012 and 13 crime comparisons. And I'll be talking about some of this at the, I'll be discussing slides like this, except to compare 11 and 12 at my presentation on the 17th in this very room. But what we're seeing is that some persons crimes are coming down, and certain person crimes, sexual offenses particularly, one offender can have a whole bunch of incidents, particularly if the offender and the victim are related to one another. If we add up incidents that occurred over the course of a number of years, then we'll arrest somebody and there'll be a large number of charges. So you take a couple of those cases out and crime, it looks like crime is dropping, but anyway, one or two suspects can change those numbers dramatically. Property totals are coming down, which is might be a good sign. It's still too early in the year to know for sure. And behavior crimes indicate that they're going up, but sometimes that has to do more with the officer availability than it does with the actual occurrence of those crimes. Let's see, property crime comparisons are okay. Let me see if there's anything that jumps out. Car theft is dramatically going down, that's good. The arsons, these often are cases where somebody throws a lit material into a dumpster, and one suspect can light half a dozen dumpsters up in a single night, so hard to know really what those numbers mean. They're still pretty small numbers. Forgery and fraud also can have dramatic differences. Scott Jeffrey McKee for instance, was responsible for quite a number of crimes. That's just one offender. Like sex offenses, one offender can have a whole bunch of charges, and that drives those numbers also. And next slide, some of our property crime details. Why don't we go ahead and skip that one. Organizationally, some of the biggest things we're dealing with right now are filling vacancies. Kathy Quinn is going to retire at the end of this month, so we need to hire an office supervisor. Kathy supervises all the administrative assistants in the department. That's about 8 people, and she manages my schedule and everything else. And apparently my idiosyncrasies too. She mentioned that I have idiosyncrasies. I didn't know that. And then, so we have to make that hire. And then we're constantly trying to keep up on staffing in the call center. We need to hire sergeants this year, lieutenants this year, and as I said, we're in the middle of the police captain process. We have 4 outside candidates right now and 1 inside the department. And we have the interviews on those coming up on July 25th. So we'll see how that goes.
Can I ask who the one inside the department is? Just so I could
We're not announcing the
Okay.
names.
Okay, sorry.
Of the finalists or the people that are still in the process. And then, of course, we're just constantly filling positions. We've hired a contracts coordinator. We have about 150 contracts that our department has with others. Crime, we filled a crime analyst, forensic analyst out at the forensic evidence unit. We hired a guy from OSP who had been a lab director. He was just an excellent hire for us. And then 6 police officers we just gave job offers to. And I think we have another 5 or 6 on the list.
Didn't your forensic units do the work or something?
Yeah, the forensic evidence unit got an accreditation through the ASCLAB, which is the American Society of Lab.
I was just surprised they could even say it.
Coordinated directors.
Yeah.
Any questions for Chief?
I didn't notice in the article on the property crimes unit, but if I remember right, they were on administrative leave, is that correct? Who's handling the property crimes now? I couldn't remember if the article said or not.
Property control unit.
Property control, I'm sorry. You're right, property control unit. I even have it written down as control, I keep saying crime. But who's handling that in their place?
We moved, let me see, we had 2 officers on light duty that we put in there. And then 3 of our 7 CSOs street CSOs are out there also. There's 3 people on administrative leave. We moved, one of them is an administrative assistant, so we moved an administrative assistant out there, and then added 5 other folks.
So is that having much impact out on the rest of the policing? I would assume it would have
Yeah,
some.
that means patrol officers are handling calls that our CSOs would otherwise handle. And then we're finding funding within our department to hire, we found enough for 1 right now and looking for another, to hire 2 additional property control unit clerks. So I want to go from the, how many we have, 1, 2, 3, 4. I want to go from the 4 that we had and add 2 more, so we'll have a total of 6 full-time property control unit and 1 full-time sergeant out there. And this is all done.
So I'm assuming you can go ahead and hire the 2, because you already got that, and you'll have to wait until...
Well, they're on administrative leave, they still...
Right, but you said you added 2 more, so those
Yeah.
2 that you can go ahead and hire.
Yeah, I've only found funding for 1 of them. We're still
Okay.
trying to figure the other one
Okay,
out.
so there's 1 you can go ahead and hire, and you'll have to
Yes.
wait until the resolution of the rest of the case or whatever's going on
Yeah.
to determine what the other positions, okay?
Right.
And one other question I had was on your report tonight. I noticed in my neighborhood, looks like there's a series of car clouds going.
Probably.
The Northwest Expressway, or
Mhm.
is there, I mean, because normally there's nothing out there, but now I see there's quite a few. Is there something you know of that's going on out there that's, okay?
No, they're very difficult to understand. Just car clouds they happen everywhere, but they do concentrate. Tough to know why.
Okay, because I know that there hasn't been any for forever, but.
Could be
okay.
somebody moved in out there.
Well, that's possible. Okay.
Could be anything.
Other questions? Okay, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
All right. So, closing comments. Anybody want to start? Claire, wow, you're quick.
Well, I'll start with a complaint. So I was kind of frustrated about our conversation about the homeless, this scoping. I understand concerns about some of the language in the draft, but we did agree that the topic would be on the agenda in the work plan for the commission. And then at last meeting, we voted, I know it was a close vote, but we did vote to add it to the agenda. And I felt like there was annoyance among some of the commissioners that we were talking about this topic. So, I think we were trying to figure out how we wanted to talk about it, which is good, and I think we made some progress, but, it was legitimate that it was on our agenda and that Carter, brought this draft to us and is trying to help us figure out how to do that. So hopefully we'll get a new iteration of the purpose that will more conform with what this body wants to see from that topic, and we'll move forward. So I got the opportunity to attend the State of Public Safety event that the commission put on, and thanks so much for those of you who worked on that. It was a really valuable forum. I thought the folks who came got a lot out of it, and I thought people asked some really great questions. And there was acknowledgement of the hard work of volunteers in the community. So at a recent council meeting, I called that out, and so anyone who is watching on the web, hopefully I said it's posted on the website. You can go watch it if you like. And thank you, Chief, for your participation there as well. And then this is just something I think to take up at another time. I'm not quite sure how to work on this, but we had a couple of times at public comment at City Council, folks come and ask us about the concern of opposite sex searches when folks are being booked, I think when they're being arrested and booked, and particularly the issue around minorities. And so, Chief, I don't know if I should take that up with you via email to look at that policy, but at a council meeting, I said I would follow up on having us look at, because right now my understanding is the policy is that if you're being booked and you would prefer to be searched by a person of your own gender, you have to actually verbalize that as a request, and 17-year-old women may not know that they have that right. So I'm not sure that that's an issue for this commission to take up, but it is a concern, and I just wanted to raise it up there.
George?
I was supposed to write to you all, which I neglected to do because of my age. And it was something suggested at the CRB meeting that should be brought up to the police commission. What was it Mark suggested? And it was working with EPD to determine what info may be of value with the perspective of regard of collecting demographic information on stops, is what Mark said, and I forget who brought that up, but it brought up at the last meeting, so that was the question that was asked, and I did not email it, but I did have it in my notes.
Ms. Carter, you did an excellent job getting us started on that conversation. If my comments were in any way, I apologize. I agree with Claire. The redirection was brought up and possible by how you put that out there. And absolutely, it is legitimate as a subject matter. I reacted emotionally, and I should know to let her talk first. Secondly, Caitlin, I just wanted to out loud say what a great job I thought you've done, and I appreciate your service to the community very much. Thank you.
Make me cry.
You guys will be partying before you know it. Jim?
I want to comment also on the public safety forum. I want to thank James and Bob for coming down and helping set it up, although it was, well, and Jesse was there too. I was going to get him too. I thought he came later. I was going to, yeah. And Caitlin for being a facilitator, stepping up after we lost our facilitator and stepping up and doing that. She did a very good job. And Jesse and Claire for showing up and being there. And Chief for participating in the panel too. I thought that there also looked like there were a number of conversations afterwards out in the hallway. Looked like some of the panelists stayed around, and looked like some of your officers may have stuck around too, or maybe they were, I couldn't tell whether they were yours, they were in suits, so I wasn't sure if they were your staff or if they were the sheriff's, but I wasn't sure if the sheriff had any staff that were in suits anymore. But it looked like they were getting a lot of their questions answered more extensively than were answered in the panel, so I thought that was good too. And I know some of the DA's office stuck around too, so that was good. And Caitlin, thank you for all your time. That was it's been a good time. It's definitely been interesting. Your comment, you're always good about firing things off, which is good. At least it gets the conversation going. Thank you.
Thanks.
You mind if I take a turn?
No, go for it.
I like the panel, the format for the panel discussion. Taking questions on note cards is a good way to go. If you've been on a panel, you know that most of the questions are actually speeches, unless they're on a card. So what's the point of having panelists if we're there to listen to all that? And then on the homeless issue, my interest in having you discuss this is to think about whether or not the police department should have some guiding principles in its enforcement of certain things. I'm pretty sure 99.9% of the prohibited camping citations and arrests we've ever made are to people who are homeless. I doubt that there are people with homes that we've issued those citations to. I just can't think of an instance. Or the illegal camping that we do for people who live in their cars, and the city has an entire program for illegal camping that occurs on the street that is designed to not eradicate the problem, but sort of keep it shifted in a place where it's tolerable to the community. Drinking in public that's almost exclusively on Friday and Saturday night. An arrest we make of people who are 21 years old or so, give or take a few. But in the middle of the day, it's people who are homeless. So there are things like that, and I'm not asking that we come up with a principle or a guiding principle that says we don't take enforcement in certain cases, or we do, or we take enforcement in 100% of cases, but just that we have some thoughtful purpose between how we approach the issue around those offenses that are committed almost exclusively by people who are homeless.
See, you can't talk. I should shut up.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. So I wanted to also thank Caitlin for her service to the commission. It's been great working with you, and you'll be hard to replace. I wanted to say to James how sorry I am about what happened to your wife. Sorry, I didn't know I was going to be upset.
Jesus, I forgot.
That's just heartbreaking, really, that would happen in this day and age, that somebody would make that kind of a callous, thoughtless comment that's race-based like that. So, sorry, I didn't mean to get upset. I just think it's tragic that people still treat other people like that. Sorry. You guys know I'm a big baby. You've seen me cry before. I also wanted to say that in regard to, I myself received a ticket in the past about running a red light. I didn't do it intentionally, but I had a friend this week whose 18-year-old son was killed in another state on a bicycle from someone that was running a red light. So it's just a good reminder that, you know, we're not all in that much of a hurry, that we can't pay attention to the traffic laws. And, you know, that's a tragedy for their family. They lost another child a few years ago. So I just want to remind people about that. It's easy to try to speed through the light, but sometimes there's a risk you're not aware of and it can affect people's lives. And I wanted to also say sorry I missed the public forum because I was on vacation at a beautiful lake, so I'm not that sorry, but I will watch the videotape because I would have liked to have attended. And I do expect that we'll see the homeless population disproportionately affected by some of the enforcement of the laws, just like drivers are the ones who are affected by traffic citations because they're on the road driving. People who aren't driving aren't going to get those citations. So I'm sure that's what we'll find in at least the camping case or the camping in the parks case. Thanks. Sorry, I didn't mean to cry.
It's okay. It's all right, man.
I'm going to reserve my comments for last. Jesse?
I want to thank the department for changing the retention policy for personal recording devices and notes taken during stops. One thing I don't see in the policy is, in the new policy, is what happens to them after. The notes obviously have to be retained, but what about if a recording was made on a personal smartphone or any other electronic device? It doesn't tell what to do with them so that they can be accessed or saved according to the policy. We ended our discussion earlier about the new commissioner selection process. In the past, we've done a hiring committee, and I would like to do that again. It's probably too late in this meeting to move for that and to select the committee, but if it's not, I would suggest that we do it, because I think that process has worked well in the past. Third, I'm going to pass out an article. It was the feature article in this month's American Bar Association Journal. It's an important topic. The title is "How Did America's Police Become a Military Force on the Streets?" I think it's got, can you just pass that around? I'm not saying this is a problem here. I think I've got a lot of faith in our current police chief, but I don't think that's a reason to become complacent. I think this is an excellent article for a group like ours to at least peruse.
Jesse, it's not too late to do that if you want.
I'm going to move that we create a hiring committee, or not a hiring committee, whatever we call it.
Screening committee?
Screening committee for the new commissioner selection process.
Second.
Raise your hand if you'd want to be on that. Yeah, see, there's not that many. Perfect. Okay, Bob, would you mind coordinating that?
No.
Did we take a vote?
Carter will let me know when.
Is there any dissension?
People want to.
Just,
I
I don't
yeah, I
kind of
don't
understand
either.
how that works and how that
either.
would happen.
Can I?
You said it's happened before?
I can respond.
Sure.
We can fill out the application online, and you give your qualifications. We did have to put some down there, as I remember now. And you say why you would like to serve and answer the essay. Then you come to the meeting, and in my case, I think Juan Carlos, Tamara, and I think it was Joe. No, it wasn't Joe. The one who was the guy before Joe.
Tim Miller.
Yeah, were there at that meeting, and I sat and gave, justified the reasons why I felt that way, and they asked me some pointed questions that they had about the community, how I thought that might help, and I felt like I informed them on what I felt. And then, of course, that goes to council, and the council makes the final decision anyway.
Well,
so.
actually, the committee scores the candidates and
Right.
makes comments. That goes to the mayor.
The mayor,
And
I'm
and the
sorry,
mayor
the
looks at that
right.
information in conjunction with her interview of the candidates and her nomination to the
That's
city
true.
council.
Okay, thank
Bob
you.
didn't know that because he was the candidate.
That's right.
Yeah. You didn't get part
He
B.
didn't know that part.
You was the screening.
Okay, that makes sense.
I did
Yeah,
have an interview
yeah.
with the mayor.
You were like,
remember
wait,
that?
there was something there. Yes,
How did you
yes.
forget?
So is there any opposition to have a screening? I mean, really, it's just another piece of input. It's not even screening for the mayor, it's in addition to consideration.
Yeah, because her interviews are very short, at least in my experience. I don't know,
Yeah.
but mine was like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So just the additional comments and scoring just is additional information for her to consider.
I'm good.
Well, and then also your prospective candidates get to meet current commission members before coming on board.
That too, yeah.
So we'll do that, Bob will coordinate. Okay,
And if you know anybody that would be good on the police commission, please encourage them to apply.
true. Okay, James?
Okay, well, first off, Caitlin, you were very exciting, you were exquisite, and you got your point across, and you know, I like it when you say, okay, let me have your attention, stop talking. So it kind of got back like a little old school type deal stuff, you know, and she didn't know anything about that, but it happened. So really appreciate that you brought a real refreshing change, and we appreciate that, and we're going to miss that. Chief, excellent participation out there at the forum. I think that the way that you expressed yourself and the rest of the panel, they were very on point with their responses and stuff, and I think that that was something that everybody needed to hear. So I thought that was done very well. The commissioners that all participated lifted the chairs and all that other stuff, and thank you. It saved my back quite a bit, so I appreciate your help on that. Last month, I was overwhelmingly nominated and voted in as the chair of the OCBA, which is part of the Oregon Advocacy Commission, in particular the Oregon Commission on Black Affairs. So I now have statewide duties and stuff that dealing with some of those issues, and I didn't get a chance to bring it up, but the racial profiling is some of the legislation portion that we worked on up there in Salem and stuff, you know, and some of the other laws that got passed. We had one that got kicked back when we all supported the dismantle of capital punishment, the death penalty here in Oregon, but we'll revisit that later on. So I didn't get a chance to talk to Mrs. Parker about that, but anyway, if you are so inclined, my picture is very prominently displayed, and I'll give you the website if you care to go look at it, and it's at www.oregon.gov/OCBA, and I have cards here if you're interested.
Is there a like button on that?
No, there's no like button. We took all those off, so you can't like it or dislike it.
Oh, all right. Well,
Great group. Again, every month I get excited about coming here because this is some of the best friends, some of the best colleagues, some of the best minds that we have here in Eugene and stuff. And I know we're all moving toward the same direction to build those bridges with the community and also give some recognition to the street officer out there and stuff. So, thanks. Oh, one other thing. Would you mind standing up for a minute? Kind of show you. See, we got the memo together. See, yeah, we got the memo. Yeah,
your color coordinated. Yeah, I got the same.
Well,
Okay, now you know how Jim and I roll.
All right.
Thank you for sharing that.
You need to clean color coat with that next time.
Yeah, I'll have to work on that.
Yeah.
Does that mean you're a little more square than he is?
Bob?
Yeah, thank you. You know, I would like to add one thing that we were remiss on mentioning, and that's Carter's role in that public safety forum. She really got everything, brought it all together for us, because, you know, some of the things that we did, even though our numbers were creative as to the total count, I counted a few less than that, but it was, they may have come in and out, so when I counted, it might have been.
She got those from me.
My point, oh, okay.
And because I was counting, some people came and went.
That
so
might be, I was thinking that, and so my point is, what I really had thought about was why so few people were there when this was a major concern of all of Eugene, the state of public safety. What else is more important than your own safety? I couldn't fathom why more people didn't show up, because the people that came were genuinely interested. Even a lady from Cottage Grove who had experienced more break-ins down there. So, you know, I was glad the sheriff was able to answer her questions. And there just was so little interest, and I was surprised at that. But I don't know why, because you still see at our meetings that there aren't a great number of people. We only get a handful at times. So that kind of thing isn't allowed. Now, in reference to comments made earlier about this policy we're gonna look into, I really didn't feel like I was annoyed with it. I was confused by it maybe, and not happy, but with some of the way it was presented, as Mike had said. But I was not totally annoyed. If I gave that impression, I'm sorry. But I will say this: in the committee, in this commission rather, all opinions are accepted. I mean, outrage, indignation, anger, annoyance, crying.
Don't say crying.
Tom Hanks said.
Y'all have seen me cry before, so don't act
So what
surprised.
happens when you set a good example? Everybody starts falling all over themselves to be better.
Tom Hanks said no crying in baseball, but
You cannot be as dramatic as I am, I'm sorry.
you saw the movie. But actually, I really welcome and hope any genuine emotion should be brought to the meeting, because if you're feeling these kinds of things, the discussion only begins as we start to talk about what it is that's making us the way we are today, and why we respond to things the way we do. If we don't put in our own feelings about this and how we feel, you're not going to get anything out of it. Nothing's going to happen. It's just going to stay status quo. So yeah, the stone gets smoother by the constant rubbing of the ocean as it pounds the stone, and that's the way it has to work here too. Sometimes you have to just hash it out. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Have a good summer. Have a good summer off.
That's all, folks.
I think Caitlin is gonna go.
Yeah.
We're all gonna have a cry-in.
So 2 reminders first. You don't have a meeting in August, don't show up. Just go do something fun. Second, I had a random thought about where to publicize your meetings or events at, and you might want to consider publicizing them at the Republican and Democratic parties. Not that the Republican Party's right back here, but one person may come. But the Democratic Party, I bet they would make people go. So I would email them. And then second off, so back in 2011, I joined this commission because I just love participating in political process. I love a challenge. I love talking to people, debating. And I came in here thinking I was going to change the world. And the first day, I shoved my foot in my mouth so bad. And Linda called me out on it. I thought she was going to strangle me at the table. And I called Tim Lowy an angry man. And no one will let me live that down. And I'm still sorry till this day. But I just want to thank everyone here, because I did come in really young, and I had a lot of ideals, and I had a lot of passion, and I'm in such a stage in my life where I'm learning so much, and without this experience, I honestly wouldn't be who I am today. I've learned a lot about teamwork, about leading, about just gaining more patience and understanding and empathy for other people, and I just sincerely appreciate all the patience and support and leadership and guidance you have all provided me. I know I am